I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the City of Redondo Beach Planning Commission on Thursday, January 21st, 2021. This is, so the wording is a little bit different here. Can I have a call to order, please? Oh, that's me. And how about a roll call?
Sure, a roll call. I can do that. Commissioner Hensley.
Here.
Commissioner Topro.
Here.
Commissioner Ung.
Here.
Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Here.
Commissioner Godek. Here. Commissioner Berg. All right, Seth, if you can unmute and just say here.
Sorry, here.
That's all right, just to be official. And Chair Elder.
Here. Commissioner Hensley, would you like to lead us in the salute to the flag, please?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. And I think at this time it might be good to point out we do have a new member tonight joining us. Commissioner Berg, would you like to give a quick introduction?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I live over in, nice to meet everybody, even though it's this way. Hopefully the next time we see each other, or next few times we see each other, we'll all have the shot and we can be in person. And I actually have shorter hair and I lost a bet with the mustache, so you probably won't recognize me. I live over on Goodman Avenue, and I'm excited about being involved with you guys. It's a little bit of a learning curve. If some of you have been on this for a long time, so you're probably a little used to this, but it feels a little overwhelming. So I hope you'll bear with me if I have questions that may seem stupid. Some of the colloquialisms and stuff like that seemed a little like, what does that mean? But I guess we'll all figure it out.
Excellent. Welcome to Planning Commission. We're happy to have you. And we will.
Thank you.
There are no stupid questions, so please ask. If something doesn't make sense, by all means ask, and we will try to be cognizant of that as we go, but absolutely stop us along the way. And hopefully we have a few easy meetings in the start of this year so that it's nothing in the deep end yet. But
yeah, exactly.
Excellent. That brings us to D, approving the order of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
I'll move Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Strutzenberg, seconded by Commissioner Topro to approve the order of the agenda. We'll start our roll call vote, and hopefully the names don't move around on me. Commissioner Ung.
Yes.
Commissioner Topro.
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Godek.
Yes.
Commissioner Berg.
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. So Commissioner Berg, for your enjoyment, we will be going through those a lot. So apologize. That's what we have to do during these virtual sessions here, but you'll get used to it. That brings us to blue folder items. Do we have any blue folder items tonight?
You do not.
Okay. This brings us to consent calendar. These are business items, except those formally noticed for public hearing or those pulled for discussion are assigned to the consent calendar. The commission members may request that any consent calendar items be removed, discussed, and acted upon separately. Items removed from the consent calendar will be taken up under the excluded consent calendar section below. Those items remaining on the consent calendar will be approved in one motion. The chair will call on anyone wishing to address the commission on any consent calendar items on the agenda, which has not been pulled by the commission for discussion. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once, and comments will be limited to a total of 3 minutes. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on a consent calendar item?
We do not.
Okay, would any commissioners like to pull anything from the consent calendar? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar items F1 through F3?
Motion to approve, Commissioner Ung.
Second by Strutzenberg.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Ung, seconded by Commissioner Strutzenberg to approve consent calendar items F1 through F3. Back to our roll call vote. Commissioner Ung.
Yes.
Commissioner Topro.
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Godek,
Yes.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes. The consent calendar is approved. There are no excluded consent calendar items, which brings us to public participation on non-agenda items. This section is intended to provide members of the public with the opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear on the agenda for action. This section is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak?
Holly, did you want to speak right now?
No, I don't have anything right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there's no others, Chair.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Ex parte communication. This section is intended to allow all officials the opportunity to reveal any disclosure or ex parte communication about the following public hearings. Does anyone have any ex parte communication to disclose?
I think we have a public hearing, do we?
We've only got an item for discussion, so I don't think we have to disclose anything. Keeps it easy.
Mhm.
Was
We
there,
have-
I'm sorry, real quick, was there anything under H1 under the receive and file written communications? Do they need to receive and file?
There, so under H1, there was a receive and file item. We could go back and formally receive and file that. It was included with the agenda packet.
Okay, so this will be receiving file the agenda packet.
Yes, so item H1 that was included with the agenda packet, just to formally receive and file.
Perfect. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Brandy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it a motion to approve H1? Is that what we're looking for?
Yes, sir.
Or
No, to
to
receive
receive
and file.
and file.
No.
We don't have a motion
Motion.
to,
Motion to receive and file written communications, item H1.
second.
A motion by Commissioner Ung, seconded by Commissioner Hensley to receive and file written communications for the Planning Commission on non-agenda items. Another roll call vote. Commissioner Ung,
Yes.
Commissioner Toporo,
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Godek,
Yes.
Commissioner Berg,
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. And Zoom is being kind to me tonight. People aren't moving around on the list, so this is going to be the order all night. All right, there are no public hearings. There are no items continued from previous agendas. So we do have an item for discussion prior to action, and that brings us to L1, a discussion regarding regulations related to outdoor living space and open space. I'll turn it over to our planning manager.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And members of the Planning Commission. Sean Scully, Planning Manager here at the city. So this is a continued discussion item. We've provided for you a number of documents that essentially summarize the discussions to date, those points of concession, where there was consensus of the Planning Commission on some proposed changes to the current standard for outdoor living space. Also, I'm going to go back to the agenda just to make sure I'm hitting all the items. So the other item that we provided for you was the outdoor living space site plan examples. And I'd be happy to walk through those real quickly if you want. So I'll pose that to the chair and to the commission. But in addition to that, we had Commissioner Hensley's comments and his draft changes that we'll leave to Commissioner Hensley to present. And then what else did we have? We provided also the actual existing outdoor living space requirements and then minutes from the prior meeting. So we're really continuing the discussion. Ultimately, if the Planning Commission reaches consensus on some recommended changes they'd like to see, those would be referred to us to take up to the City Council. And then see
I
what
just want to mention what a great job that you did in showing the work. I just really want to just say thank you for outlining it so nicely and visually pleasant to look at and understand.
You're very welcome. So I'd be happy to walk through those real quick, or you however you guys, the commission would like to take it.
Yeah, so I'd like to second what Commissioner Topro said. The visuals make it so much easier to understand what we're actually looking at. So really appreciate that. It helps us better understand what the impacts of these changes would be. So I appreciate your work there. I'd also say I think it would be useful to go through them, particularly because we have new commissioners who haven't seen the outdoor living space pieces before. Does any commission member have any objection to going through that? Perfect. Yeah, so if you don't mind just running through that just to give everyone
Sure.
a level set, that would be great.
All right, let me go ahead and get to that real quick. Okay, I'll share my screen now. Okay, can you see this screen here? Let me expand this. So this is the existing site conditions, scenario one. We ran through a number of scenarios, as you could see from the exhibits, to try to provide you with a sense of, the reality of the changes that you are all discussing. So this is a R3 zone property, total size 11,250 square feet. So that's a large lot here by Redondo Beach standards. You would get, with that size lot, you would have 4 units permitted, and the different options here, option A, and we can just walk through them so I can explain it as we get to them. Okay, so this is the existing standard and how it would apply to a 4 condominium development on this size lot. So you can see basically 10 by 20 outdoor living space areas on each condominium. Additionally, just as a note, the 4th unit usually wouldn't have it because of the rear yard providing that requirement. So that's kind of the starting point. This is the option B. This is the 300 square foot in one location with no bonuses. And then all the other standards that were the consensus of the Planning Commission in terms of let's say the reduced square footage for the space that's provided based on the size of it. 5 by 10 would be calculated at 50%, 7 by 10, 75%, 10 by 15 or greater calculated at 100%. And that's all assuming that they're, accessed by a communal space, dining room, living room, kitchen. So with 300 square feet required in one location with no bonuses, you see this growth in the area. And also a reduction in the allowable square footage that the development can provide based on other standards, setbacks, heights, stories. So just essentially, you've got your 300 square foot on the ground floor. Then you're required to have another large balcony up on the second floor to provide that additional 100. In this case, I think it's 50 square feet, because that 15 by 7 is actually discounted because in the second floor, it's probably not on the communal space. If I'm getting that right, let's see. Yeah. Or actually, yes, that's correct. So that's that scenario. Then we basically the same consensus points in terms of those percentages. And then this is 300 square feet, not in one location. So, and again, no bonuses. So basically mirroring or mimicking the 10 by 20. Let me go back up real quick. What was the original? Yeah, the existing condition, kind of the 10 by 20, that would be, on the ground floor. did I get to this right? Scenario 1, yeah, option B. Actually, in having to grow it. No, I'm in the wrong one. I'm sorry. Excuse me. So we do 10 by 20, then we have another space above that, 10 by 15, and then another 10 by 15. So it's really just, it actually requires more space, open space, if you don't have the requirement for 300 square feet in one location. It's kind of a little bit counterintuitive. So there's that for your consideration.
I'm sorry, it's Sean.
Yeah.
However, if you use the prior scenario, or at least the configuration that you had, that would be compliant with the one that we just saw, option C, because just because it's not required to be one continuous piece, you still could choose to do it if it made sense.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I would agree with that. So, yeah, and I think after running these scenarios, I would suspect any developer that would be proposing, outdoor living space to comply would understand that, and you'd see this option B versus, the option C, unless there was some other standard, let's say, input that didn't allow you to do 300 in one location. So that would then kick it into this scenario C, or option C.
All right, Commissioner Strutzenberg, did you have a question on that as well?
Yeah, just real quick, a clarification, Sean, on that very first one, option A. The 10 by 20 is actually a little bit generous there, isn't it? It could actually be a 10 by 17 and a half and meet the 350. Is that right?
I'd have to do the math. Let me go to that.
Yeah, because the 10 by 20 with the current 100% bonus would give a 400, and for an R3, 350 is the requirement. So
yeah, that's true. But they would have to. Isn't there? It is. You're correct. Yeah. And so it is 350, and they could meet it by that.
okay, so you just and it's what you did is fair. It just, I wanted to point out that a developer may actually go towards the minimums, and they
That's
could do it with a 10 by. They would have to do the 10 would have to remain, I think, in order to make it qualify, and anything over 15 makes it qualify on the other dimension. So a 10 by 17 and a half would qualify for 100% bonus under the current.
That's correct.
Okay. Small point. I wanted to clarify that, make sure I was correct. So, okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right. So then moving down to the last option, this is essentially just taking the entire requirement of 350 square feet and requiring it to be in one location. And you see, and real quick, if we could, before we move on, just kind of see the impact on the unit size. I think that's kind of important to understand. So this option, a typical unit would be able to yield a little over 2,200 square feet, almost 2,200 square feet on the option C. 20 about the same. So they're all coming out about the same with respect to option B, C, and D. And then option A, you can see the unit size under the current standards. And actually, to Commissioner Strutzenberg's point, it would actually be a little bit larger than that. So about 2,500 square feet.
Sean?
Yeah.
I was trying to make the comparison. When I was looking at option B versus option D, it looked as though option D, because it's requiring 350 versus 300, it would have yielded a smaller unit size. But I'm seeing in these scenarios that option D actually yielded a larger unit size, and that just didn't compute.
Let me look. Let's see, option B. You were saying option B and option D?
Yeah, so if you look
Yeah.
at option B that you have there, it's 2215. But
Mhm.
then when you went to option D, which had a larger outdoor space requirement, it yielded a larger unit size, 2232. And it's hard for me to imagine how you can have a larger outdoor requirement and result in a larger building.
If I may, with that, with option D as in dog, that one, all of it's in one space, but it gets 100% of the credit, right? So option B, however, the secondary space is only getting, what was it, 50% of the credit, probably, because it's part
Yes.
of the bedroom. So that's why, even though that, it looks like, 20 by 15 seems like it's 20 by 17 and a half, really not much different, but it was just how are you going to work that? That's 100% in that backyard area versus,
Okay.
only a 50% on the upper balcony.
Okay, so the moral of the story is if one wanted to maximize square footage, you would consolidate all your outdoor living space into a single area.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I got it.
All right. Any questions on this first scenario? Any more comments? Yeah.
Commissioner
Sean,
Clinton.
go ahead. Somebody else? Was it Seth?
No, sorry, I was just calling on you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, just a quick question on the 5 by 10. So does anything below 5 by 10 not count at all?
It does not.
Okay, so if it's a 5 by 9, there's no credit for it, basically. They can do it, but there's no credit for it. Okay, so it's anything between 5 by 10 and 7 by 10 is 50%, as we're proposing.
Scenarios, yes.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure that it's clear that anything below 5 by 10 in either of those dimensions, it gets no credit. They can still do it, but it has no credit. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Would you like to move forward, Chair?
Yes, sorry. Actually, I should have done this earlier, but if you don't mind, just a little bit of quick history for those watching and those who are new to this discussion. The reason we're looking at this today is there have been a number of projects that have come forward where the developer has really maximized the dimension that they can use to build out these really quite large projects that they're inconsistent with the neighborhood. They meet our zoning requirements and they meet our municipal code, but they take advantage in some of our opinions of our outdoor living space definitions to really create outdoor living space that isn't outdoor living space. And they get these bonuses that allow them to not build as much as the community, I think, would like to see. And so this is an issue that's come up for us a number of times where the projects meet all the legal requirements. They're inconsistent, though, with the look and feel of the neighborhood, whether through mass and bulking or other inconsistencies and general plan inconsistencies. And that's kind of a gray area. So we decided as a commission it was worth looking into how can we better define our municipal code potentially to really better clarify what the expectations are from the community on what's acceptable. So that's why we're having this discussion now is we're looking at potentially modifying our outdoor living space definitions so that we can have more consistency and have a better guidepost both for developers and community members so that there's no surprises for anyone, and we can have these properties that aren't massively built out to every dimension possible and have something that's I think a little more approachable. So just to give a little history to everyone watching, but sorry. Thank you, Sean. Just wanted to interject that. Should have done that earlier. Sorry.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for that, Sharon. That was valuable. So scenario 2, we've got 4 options again. The context here, this is an R3 lot again, 7,500 square foot in size. This is very typical for what we deal with regularly. This size lot would yield a total number of units of 3. The setbacks there, I didn't really go over that too much in the last one, but front setback 18, side 5 feet, and rear 15. This is the existing lot here with the footprint. The option A would be 350 square feet in one location with bonuses allowed, so our existing standard, and then we go through the same iterations, options B, C, and D, with variations of what the Planning Commission was considering during the last discussion. So here is kind of the existing conditions to achieve compliance with the existing outdoor living space requirement. It's again 350 square feet total with 301 location, bonuses allowed. So this is a scenario where we have 12 by 15. Let's see, I got 180 square feet outdoor living space on the second floor, and then you get the bonus, which would provide you with the entire amount of outdoor living space. So this is all in one location. Okay, so the next is 350 square feet in one location, no bonuses. Again, this is similar to the B in the first scenario, 20 by 15, and then another required 7 by 15 area to yield the amount of square footage of outdoor living space. And you'll notice we really start to, in the typical unit size, the numbers start to drop. These are fairly modest as designed here, meeting existing standards, a little over 2,000 square feet. And then in the first scenario, first option, option B, 300 square feet in one location, no bonus. It drops the square footage of the unit to around 1,600 square feet. Then scenario 2, this is 300 square feet. Again, kind of we just flipped it. We kept we said not in one place, so we just broke it up and provided this scenario of multiple spaces, and it yielded about the same, a little bit more actually, I think, than the last scenario. No, about the same, a little bit less, 1,540 square feet. And then the option D is 350 square feet in one location. Again, this tends to allow for more development, more square footage of living space versus outdoor living space, or same amount of outdoor living space, I guess. Although you do get a lot more when you don't meet that 100% criteria and you do anything less. The large size. When you go with anything smaller, you're only getting a percentage, so you have to provide more. So I think, in just kind of talking this through, and from comments on the last scenario, you would I think see a pressure on the development community to put it all in one location. It tends to provide them with a little bit more developable, livable square footage. And, just as something to think about, the usability, I guess, from the owner perspective, could be greater with that one large area. So it's something to think about.
I have just a comment to make here, if I may. I really prefer like the big area, and I wonder, is there a way to encourage the developers to use the preferable sunny side for the outdoor area? I don't think we have a requirement for that, right?
No, we don't, but I believe them in the purpose.
I've seen it in other cities, where there's some kind of, like usually if there's a view, then, they encourage you to build for a view, or if there's a, the best sun exposure. So I was just kind of curious, Because I don't remember that. I mean, I remember seeing it for other cities, but I don't remember seeing it in ours.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Commissioner Topper. However, I think it was on the Prospect property. One of the things they considered there was how it would impinge upon the properties adjacent to it.
Right, exactly. So
we'd have to give priority to that, perhaps. But maybe you can encourage it, but that's just a guideline.
As a guideline that, hey, try to give people the outdoor space on the southwest side as much as possible, or the west side. And I see larger space as just a higher quality space than, these stupid little balconies that you can't even put a cafe table on. So this is interesting to see the actual math of how this breaks down. And again, thank you so much for doing this for us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, I imagine the realtor taking people into a place with the big deck like that, and the first reaction, oh my God, that deck is huge, and people love it.
Yeah, exactly. And for the kids, for playing, it's bigger, and you've got you can actually have a little garden up there, and it's lovely.
Excellent.
Commissioner Hensley.
First I want to thank staff not only for putting together this excellent material to visualize what we're talking about, but also even just having this meeting with just this topic tonight. So I think that's really great on everyone to get together so we can talk about this. One question I had, Sean, on the option D that we're looking at, if they put that big one area deck on the second floor, couldn't they technically make the building square footage bigger? Because they wouldn't have that 50% overhang restriction, right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
So I would foresee that if we went with one big area as proposed here, that that rear unit is not going to get anything because they're going to use the rear setback. But also, it probably I would think guarantees it on the second floor, so they can max out the square footage bigger than what's shown here. Is how I imagine it would go. But very interesting. It's difficult. There's lots of trade-offs of. I'm also a little bit not worried, but notice how small the first floor gets in some of these examples. So you're not getting much more than a bedroom and a bathroom down there. So
that may drive them to break it up a little bit too.
So, okay, thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, Sean, kind of a follow-up to that. What are the guidelines in terms of, in this particular scenario, where you have the overhang over the outdoor living space? Because I seem to recall there was something that it has to be, visible to the sky or something like that.
Yeah.
And to what extent can you have overhang before it becomes ineligible, as counted outdoor living space?
Yeah. The limit is 50% of the outdoor living space. It has to be open with no structure above it.
Okay, can I clarify something on that too, Sean, while you're on that? Would that be to the wall line, exterior wall line above, or would that include a roof eave overhanging?
It'd be an eave as well.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So basically a footprint of whatever is above it that sticks out the furthest. Okay.
Correct.
So that would restrict it potentially even further if they had eaves. Okay.
Okay. All right. So we can move towards the final scenario 3. This is another fairly standard situation here in Redondo. R2 lot, 6,000 square feet, 2 permitted units, front setback of 20 feet, sides of 5, rear of 15, and then between structures has to be 20 feet. Let's see, we have, again, kind of our 4 options, starting with the 1 location and bonuses allowed, our existing outdoor living standard.
Hey, Sean, while you're on this sheet,
Yeah.
in the rear setback, can they count the area that is the side setback or not? Should the side setbacks extend all the way to the back? Or can they count that entire area that you have in the light green?
They can count the entire area. It's basically the whether it's in the setback is a little bit irrelevant. It's just as long as it meets the minimum width, you can carry that all the way through and minimum depth to that whole area.
Okay, I came up in one discussion that we couldn't include the side setback that would extend into the rear setback, but it sounds like we can.
Yeah, we can.
Just the way you've drawn it.
Yes.
So that entire light area is open for
outdoor living space.
Basically for one unit. You can't split it up, can you? It has to be adjacent to?
Yeah, it does. It has to be accessible to that unit from, preferably common living area. But
okay.
Yeah.
So there isn't a minimum. I mean, like in this particular case, it's a 5-foot side setback, or there's no. It does count regardless of how narrow it is.
Well, no, it still has to meet the minimum width requirements to qualify as outdoor living space, but it can be even in the side yard.
Right. So if it happens to be a 10-foot side setback width, they could count it. But the standard or the minimum of 5, it's interesting, but it doesn't count.
Yes, correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and the only setback that doesn't is prohibited from qualifying is your front setback.
So what if they notched? I can do it with my cursor, but you can't see it. What if they did? So what you're saying is the side setback can't count because it's only 5 foot. Is that right?
Correct.
But what if they extended it into the property somehow further? Then could that 5 be part of a greater 10 depth and be counted?
Yes.
Okay. So that would, and that was one of the reasons it's on the list too, that I was hoping to limit or decrement what setback space would count towards outdoor living area. Because they could.
I just had a quick question. So is that only in the R2 that can be used, or can it be used in the other?
In all of our residential zones and mixed.
Okay. So even though in those scenarios 1 and 2, you're showing that they're providing something in the rearmost space, they could actually utilize that and then maybe even make that units a little smaller to make.
Yes, right.
So they have some flexibility in that unit size.
Correct. Yes, in that rear unit.
So on the top example, we can scroll down just a little bit again. On that 20 by 17 and a half, what would prevent them from shifting that out to the property line on a ground floor or as outdoor living space? Could they do that as long as there wasn't structure?
They could if it wasn't. We'd have to look at access to the other units. So because access ways are, they're, unless they're an integral part of the space, you can't include those. So it kind of, it's case by case.
Yeah, it could happen, but it's not necessarily that it will happen.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
An example would be like when we looked at Prospect, where they had that walkway on the south side that was intended as a walkway. So even if you extended more outdoor living space to it, it wouldn't be included as part of the outdoor living space.
Most likely not. No.
Yeah.
Could you even do it in that case where it was a dedicated walkway?
If it was dedicated walkway and access to, then no, we wouldn't.
Yeah, we wouldn't allow that. Okay.
Shall we move into the scenario 3? Okay.
Please.
Okay, so again, here's our existing conditions, current standards. 300 square feet in one location, bonuses allowed. So it, it's standard to see it as a deck on that second story where a lot of the, great room, family room, kitchen is. And this yields, in this case, a unit of approximately 2,000 square feet. And you probably, again, here, you're probably not going to see this unit with it because you've got that rear setback that they would, or that outdoor space in the rear of the unit that they would probably utilize. So this rear unit would probably be that many square feet larger.
And it doesn't need to be a 15 by 15 either, does it? We got to get to 350 total, so we'd have to have 175 again.
I think, let's see.
It's 450 in this zoning.
Yeah, that would give us 15 by 15 would give us 450 with 100% bonus under current.
Yeah, that's true. This would actually be with bonuses.
But the requirement is 450 in R2.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yes, you're right. I apologize. The total is 450. You're right. I was looking at the R3.
Thank you very much,
Commissioner. Thanks, Matt.
Appreciate that. Yes, that's why it's larger. So in one location.
So, since this is a scenario, a 40 by 150, that's kind of typical of many of the R2s around here. But I could have sworn that I've seen, even with, since this is our current code, 2,400 plus square feet. How did they get that in there?
Because they didn't have to do that second one in the back that he showed, and therefore they can add some square footage to both of them and just equal it out between the two.
And you might, in addition to that, there might be a mezzanine that's squeezed out a few more feet, a couple hundred more feet. So with the loss of this outdoor living space on this second unit, there's another 225 square feet, and then another mezzanine with a similar amount of square footage, and so you're going to get, around that 2,400.
Okay, so there are ways to increase these. These are kind of ballpark numbers, but there are creative ways to increase it as much as 20% to what we're seeing here.
I would say yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's the starting point, and then we move to 300 square feet in one location, no bonuses, and then trying to pick up the additional 150 square feet with the other reductions in terms of the, based on the size, only being allocated or only earning only a portion of it. You can see there's quite a large bite out of the development. And you could, to Commissioner Ung's point, you could see, certainly on that second unit, less of this because the majority it would probably all be satisfied by that rear unit or by the rear yard. And then additionally, maybe a mezzanine, so a couple of hundred more square feet. So, we just kind of went with a straight 2-story layout. But yeah, this does significantly, this is a rigorous standard, as you can see. And the impact on the unit is pretty significant, but there's a lot of outdoor space. So moving to, that increase from 350 to 450 certainly has an impact on when we do these reduced percentages based on the size that are being proposed. So this here is 300, again, not in one location. So it's just kind of a rerun of the 15 by approximately 15 that you have on the existing scenario, and then filling it in with these other large spaces in order to get to the 450 with the penalties and such. And this again, you could probably add a few hundred square feet, if not much more, to the rear unit. But the front unit, you could, assume a mezzanine or something in addition to try to squeeze more square footage. So you're in the probably 1,500 square foot range on this scenario. And finally, our last scenario is 450 square feet in one location. And again, that tends to, all at 100% calculation, that tends to allow for a little bit more square footage on the development and maybe an easier site plan or a floor plan, certainly, to figure out, and the largest single usable outdoor living space area as part of the unit.
Sorry, Commissioner Hensley, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Chair. Sean, would you say, and again, this is just a guess or whatever, but would you see developers wanting to put garages further underground to get a second floor? Because it's really what's taking up some of the room on the first floor is the garage, right?
Yeah, that is true. The grades would be really hard to get to get it to that point, but I would suspect that would be something that would be tried.
Okay.
Yeah, I've noted, some in the neighborhood.
We have seen that.
Have gone, under it. So it is something that people, think about it. As space gets tighter, people will spend the extra money to do the excavation, to do that, to have more space. So I think it's inevitable.
Okay. And Sean, let me ask that question. Is there a reason that, like in this example here, that the front unit there with the front yard, is there a reason it can't be between the houses in the 20-foot separation?
In this scenario, we do have many that are designed that way, and this kind of discussion is somewhat of a moot point because there's a 20-foot setback requirement, and then you have a yard between the front unit of 20 feet and then that rear yard. So there seems to be, that scenario seems to provide a lot of space, an outdoor living space. This, if you notice, the garages are fronting each other. So that space can't be used for anything.
Yeah. Normally it'd be a typical would be a side load garage, side garage, and a developer could use the 20 feet between, either give it all to the front or split it with the back or whatever. Is that right? Yeah,
that's correct. But you need a 50-foot wide lot for that.
Oh, I see. And is that more typical, or is it 40 by 150?
That's a good question. We have a lot of both.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we.
Chair Elder, I just want to let you know that the member of the public would like to speak whenever the commission's ready for any public participation on this item.
Perfect. Thank you.
So that's all I have, Chair. You certainly can. I can turn the stop sharing, or we can keep this up if you want for the discussions, or we can move over to Commissioner Hensley's presentation, however you want to proceed.
Sure. Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yeah, quick question for him. Just to confirm, the front setback cannot be used, period. Is that true?
Correct.
And we've discussed that a side setback possibly could. And a rear setback is more than likely, yes, it's going to be used.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I just want mainly to confirm on that, the issue with the front setback cannot be used. Okay, thank you.
So do we want to go forward with more discussion reviewing Commissioner Hensley's presentation, or would you like to hear from the members of the public? Anyone have a preference?
let Holly speak. She's waiting.
Yeah. I think so too.
Excellent.
Okay, Holly, you can go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask a question. Put those pictures back.
Oh, okay.
Okay, somebody asked I just wanted to make the remark that somebody asked, they thought they'd seen a lot bigger houses on R2 lots. If these are 6,000 square foot lots, actually most of the lots in North Redondo are 7,500 square foot lots that are zoned R2. There are a lot of R2 and some are R3, but I've never even seen a 6,000 square foot lot. So I kind of just wanted to point that out. And then, a whole bunch of this is Greek to me. What are those triangles?
Those are cars in the parking stalls in the garage.
Okay, I just wanted to point out about the 6,000 square feet and R2. There's a lot of 7,500 square foot R2 lots. And now that I've used my time for my question, I'll shut up.
Thank you, Holly. Always good to hear from you.
Yes, indeed.
And thank you for the clarifying questions. Should we proceed to Commissioner Hensley's review? Anyone have any objection? Excellent.
Should I share, or maybe you can?
I'd be happy to share if you like.
Thank you.
Okay, let me find there we go. Hold on here.
Just some background. These aren't really my comments per se. These are at our last meeting. I thought I was tasked with the kind of homework item to, whatever we coalesced around, which staff did a great job summarizing in the points of agreement document. I tried to at least put into code, language that we could talk about at today's meeting or tonight's meeting. So that's what this PDF document is in the red text is things that from my understanding, I thought we had kind of agreed on or kind of coalesced around. And then things in blue were all things that people had brought up and at least the commission had shown interest. So the blue underline is something to discuss. But this was based on our last discussion. So if commissioners have other thoughts or other opinions, but maybe I'll just walk through the points. So the first thing for under consideration was, we talked at the last meeting is the 300 square feet in the current code, a 10 by 15 area is, 200% bonus, and 300 square feet in one location is the requirement. So it kind of matches and makes sense, but we didn't know if we did away with bonuses, what is the right number of square feet in one location to require. And today we've seen examples of 300, 350, or not requiring it all in one location at all. And then the second part of the first blue comment there is Commissioner Stutzenberg had talked about wanting to tie the 20% of the building square footage to the open space requirement. So I put that language in here just to discuss. We can see what it looks like.
And Matt, can I interject? I had actually misstated or misunderstood what I was trying to do there. And really where I would like to see that 20% go and that criteria, if we use it at all, tying to the building square footage would be under the design guidelines, or not the design guidelines, but the
development standards.
Development standards, thank you. Not to the 300 square foot in one place. I don't think now that I understand it, that wouldn't be appropriate. I don't believe we could still do it, but I feel like that's a better thing for the total square footage under the development standards.
Okay. So yeah, we can talk about that along with all the other things. So the next point is in 1A there under private patios, balconies, and decks. The old code had a minimum size 10 by 10 for patios and decks. And I wasn't sure based on our last discussion if we wanted to set a minimum of 15 by 10 to count as a patio or deck, or leave it at 10 by 10, but keep the 100%. So as it's written right now for discussion, the minimum dimension is 15 by 10 for a deck or patio. And then balconies have a minimum dimension of 5 by 10, kind of as it was explained earlier, to even count at all for credit. But again, we could change that. You can decrease it, increase it, remove it, but the blue part there is for discussion. And then moving down, if you would, to number 2, this is the 5x10. 5x10 is counted at a 50% of the actual area, kind of as Sean had laid out in his examples, is what we kind of coalesced around. And then 7x10 is counted at 75% of the actual area. And then by eliminating number 3, the bonus, that's how end up with the 15x10 is 100%, how it should read. So, and then if you continue scrolling down, so those are the main discussion points from the last meeting. And then on number 3, Chair Elder had brought up that in our coastal, and this is, I think, from our inland code, but our coastal code had a requirement that porous pavement or other similar water quality best management practices shall be encouraged. So I just copied that language into this part of the inland code that we kind of coalesced around. And then number 5, this is Commissioner Strutzenberg's comment, and we talked about a little bit today that required side setbacks and rear setbacks and separations could count for outdoor living space, but, and again, this was my understanding of November's meeting was, you know, we wanted some discount for if it was in a setback, and so that's what's in the blue there for discussion. And I think that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then there's just a kind of table summary of comparing the before is current code, and then one of the comments from last time was kind of whatever we coalesce around, as we kind of almost seen examples today. It doesn't always make sense for an R1 and a high density or R3 or some other zone. So maybe as of now, they're kind of the same, but maybe we want to talk about which parts are better for which zoning of residential. So that's what the table's for. And I think that's it.
Kudos to you. Really wonderful what you've done. Really stellar. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So,
thank you.
Yeah, it's all for discussion. But at least we can have some language to look at, you know, because last time there was a little bit of wandering around and not really, you know, trying to just hone in on something to actually talk about so we can give something to council. And my idea is whatever we coalesce around and can agree upon would be some sort of language that we could send to council as our agreed upon changes or recommendations. But so again, these aren't my comments necessarily. This is what I understood, and I think matches up with the points of agreement that put together, but just in language form. So that's it.
And thank you again for that, Commissioner Hensley. Having it all summarized like that is fantastic, and particularly having a strike-through code. I think ultimately, you know, I think our goal should be to give council something very specific like this, because they do have a full plate of so many other topics before them. So the more concrete our recommendations are, the better. And having it laid out like this is exactly what I would like to be able to offer them. So thank you again for doing this, and also on the last meeting as well. I think that's very helpful. Commissioner Strutzenberg.
I think Wayne had his up first if he wants to go first.
Sorry, Commissioner Ung.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Hensley, for putting this proposed language together. It makes it a lot easier to have a discussion and to collaborate. So I'm just going to go down this and kind of provide my comments. The first one regarding the minimum area of 300 square feet or 20%. I think I kind of resonate with Commissioner Strutzenberg's revelation, seeing it on paper that if we agree on 300 square feet as the minimum area, I think the purpose of this is to have some large piece of area, not a bunch of little tiny ones. So, I would propose just having a single discrete number. And I think what'll end up happening is the optimal design will probably force or encourage developers to go with a larger value anyways. So, so I, right now I'm kind of looking at 300 would probably be sufficient. There could be dimensions or other factors that might not allow them to have all 450 square feet together, but as long as they can muster up 300, that might be fair. See, on the next one under 1A, I wasn't sure about having a distinction between private patios and decks and private balconies. If the purpose of this is to qualify whether they count even at a decrement or they count zero, I like just keeping it simple, 5 by 10. If it's any smaller than that, it counts zero. If it's any larger than that, yeah, you can still have it kind of smaller, but it's going to be discounted. So we'll let them make the decision on how they want to allocate their dimensions to get to the minimum amount. So I'm not sure whether we need to break it out, with two different standards. I think that just having the 5 by 10 might be sufficient. Going through the minimum dimensions, showing the decrements. I like 2. I like 3. It seems, and maybe I'm not reading it right, but unless you kind of tell them at what point, it goes from 75 to 100, we kind of need that next paragraph that got struck out. Even though it says 200%, it seems like we would need to have a statement very similar to the one above it that says, okay, when you hit 10 by 10, now you get full credit. Otherwise, we state the minimum of 7 by 10, but we never tell them when does the 75% stop. Now, if there's somewhere that it says that, then I stand corrected, but it would seem to me that you would want to have it right here to say, this is where, it's 0 if it's smaller, it's 50 if you get to this point, and it's 75 when you get to this point, and it's 100% when you get to in the case, I think that we're saying 10 by 10. Let's see. Poorest payment was good. Okay, I'm on 5. Required and non-required setbacks. And it looks as though, this is where we're addressing like the side setbacks. If they're at least 10 feet or more, this is my opinion. I think it should be counted as at 100% of the actual, whatever the guidelines are, above. But, if it's 10 feet wide and, 25 feet long, there are a lot of configurations, especially let's say if you're on a corner where you could have the 10 feet, and that almost represents a, kind of a quasi backyard. I think we had a hearing a few months ago with a house that was on a corner in which the side yard was kind of like their backyard. And I believe that property might have been, something like that would have been penalized if we only counted it as 75%. So I'm not sure whether we want to do that 75%, but actually I like the 75% more than when I saw it in the table, it says 80%. So if we do choose to go to 75%, we'll want to make sure on the table on the bottom that it reflects that percentage. And I believe that's all my comments. And in terms of the the minimum amount size, the 300 square feet, I think is sufficient. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ung. I apologize. Zoom does not give me a blinky light to indicate who was next. Commissioner Strutzenberg or Commissioner Topro?
Yeah, I think I was.
Okay, sorry, Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yeah, so following along on what Commissioner Ung just went through, I would just strike that 20% of the building square footage, whichever is greater here. I would perhaps bring that back when we get into the development standards, but as far as making it for the single space, I don't think it's appropriate. That's something I just misread. And that 300 was very much tied to a 10 by 15 with 100% bonus. That just fit hand in hand with that. And I would even propose to lower that 300 in one place to maybe 200 and give them better options to split up outdoor living space in two different areas if that was what they wanted. They still could do one single space that met the entire 350 for R3 or 450 for R2, because that's the number they still got to get to in total outdoor living area. So I was thinking maybe even reduce that 200 or that 300 down to 200. Doesn't make them do it, but it gives them options to break it up to still. And then, for example, for an R3, they could have a 200 and a 150. And both of those would still be at 100% because they meet the 10 by 15 criteria. And that's not a bad layout. Similar thing. Go ahead.
So sorry, Commissioner Schultzenberg, they both have to be off living space. Otherwise, the second one is going to be 50%.
And yeah, we can maybe
as it's currently proposed.
Yeah, as you're correct, and it could be done perhaps in a if your upper areas goes from kitchen to dining to living room, open living area, you could have one on each end, kind of thing. But you're right, under the current restrictions, that would happen. But I'd still like to see that. Strike the language about 20% here. Strike the language about 20% of the. Or the building square footage, because it's not appropriate here. And I would propose to even reduce that 200 or that 300 down to 200. And then further down, we were talking about, as far as the setbacks counting, Sean, is a 15-foot setback pretty much a standard? Is there anything less than that in the rear?
In the rear, yeah, we have 10 feet as minimums.
In which one?
Yeah, here, I got one. Let's see. 10 in the R2, average rear setback of 15 feet, minimum 10 feet.
In R2, it's 10 feet, okay.
Yes, and that's the same in R3. Average 15, minimum 10.
Average 15 okay. So
yeah.
Average still needs to be 15. Average. Making notes here, excuse me. So it could be a trapezoidal shape or something, or it could be a stepped shape. Half of it be 10 foot and half of it be 20 foot, and that would meet the average, and it would meet as long as it was split up correctly.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Because what I was seeing with that 15 foot, so it still ends up being 15 foot if it's just a square, because you got to hit the average, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I was saying was even with a 40-foot lot, you're still looking at 600 square feet. You're going to meet anything except for an R1 is different or a single family is different anyway, but you're going to meet it all with that rear area. And I'm even thinking to decrement that further than 80% because I want a balcony or another space other than just that rear setback is what I'm thinking currently, but I'm open to other thoughts on that. That's the two things that I wanted to hit on first was essentially reducing the 300 down to 200 for at least one of the spaces, and also looking at really decrementing the use of already required setbacks so that it would end up falling more in line with what you were showing with the yellow boxes on each unit. It wouldn't be as much, but I think we would end up with something. So open that to rebuttal, I guess.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Strutzenberg. Commissioner Tupperow.
I'm okay with all the comments that have gone before with Commissioner Ong and Struttensberg on this conversation. The one thing I did want to, I'm assuming it's okay, but I just wanted to voice it. So staff doesn't see any problem, right, with, before we start to make a decision on this. I just want to make sure that everything that has been put together, I guess, other than the percentage, is supposed to be 85% in the discount in the table, right? Is that if you go to the reference table, I guess there was a comment that this number was incorrect.
75%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we coalesced around a number, so maybe I made a mistake or a typo. I didn't know, the number is not decided maybe, but
yeah,
I thought that we had talked about something in that area, but
yeah, and in my notes, I had actually proposed 50%, I think, and maybe it got rebutted around a little bit, but I'm thinking even 50% may not be enough.
So code-wise, all the changes that, I guess the question to staff, so all the proposed suggestions here are all okay within regular code, right?
Well, they can be articulated as new standards.
Okay. All right.
It's hard to know how that'll play out in the real world yet, but
right. Yeah, because I imagine, especially with the front setback, I'm sure that's safety with the cars, and that's why that space cannot be used. So that's sacrosanct to not be changed. It's my, because we don't want to be sued by, somebody using that space. And so I'm good with it. I think this is just great. I was harping for a long time about, getting this on the agenda, and finally, time cleared up and we've been able to bring it to the table. So I'm just delighted that we've been able to have this happen.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just again like to thank staff for putting together the visual representation so we can really see and understand this better. That's definitely helpful. Also, thank you again, Commissioner Hensley, for producing the summary language and the charts. That makes it so much easier to have this discussion. Anyone else have any feedback, or ready for me to kind of go through this and try and get some consensus? Commissioner Hensley.
Yeah, I just had a comment. So this section is for outdoor living space and kind of what is required in one area, but it isn't, as we've seen in Sean's wonderful examples, it's not really the total requirement of the space. And so one thing I wanted to talk about tonight was if the commission had any interest to look at those requirements under the development standards, in addition to what we're proposing or whatever we can coalesce here around the outdoor living space.
I think the consensus in the past was that we do want to look at these other subjects, including outdoor living space and commercial zones and everything like that. We just wanted to start with something smaller, something a little more bite-sized, so that we can put this together. It's a little more discreet. We can present it to council and get their feedback on whether they have an appetite for this change, because ultimately it's their decision. But if we can do one of these successfully and really start to make those changes, then we can tackle additional pieces. Is that a fair assessment for everyone? Excellent.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Absolutely. The bite size,
My concern is not the right word, but my thinking is like this part of the code is kind of the final tweaking of how you calculate and where you want one space and whatever. But I'm thinking we're gonna have to come back and revise this based on whatever, if we make any changes to the total outdoor space requirements under the development code.
Yeah, from everything we've talked about, I don't see that this would necessarily interfere with making revisions to the other sections. I see this as basically, the other ones still give you the total. This is just how you would count it and chop it up. But you still got to get to, and we could increase those totals and still all of this would work. It's possible that it could end up in some tweaking to it. But I think this could stand alone as well and not interfere with other changes from everything I've seen. And then a quick question too, Sean or Randy, do we even have any RH 1, 2, or 3 in the city? I couldn't find any on the zoning map. It's in the code, but do we need to be concerned about those development standards when we get to that? Or
we do have a few locations with those zoning designations, mostly in the kind of the central area of PCH, along Pacific Coast Highway, Torrance Boulevard to City Hall.
Okay, I'll go back and look at the map again. I was scanning the map trying to come up with some of those with my magnifying glass, and I couldn't see any. So they're a small thing though, but we would still need to potentially address those.
Okay. All right. Hearing from the other commissioners, not a ton of appetite. One other thing, actually, sorry, two other things I want to bring up. Sean, can I see the Planning Commission points of agreement document?
Sure.
It's actually page 2 of that. Sorry, I think they're together.
Can you
Brandy,
see it? No.
I'm at the bottom of the points of agreement. Brandy had set out some Hoboken, New Jersey.
Let me see. Yes.
Yeah. So this is like she's sent out an example of pervious surface requirements in another city. And actually, but when I read this, what I want to talk about and see if any commissioners have any desire for this, but if you actually look at number 1, for their patios and terraces, they actually say that they have to be at a height not more than 18 inches off of finished grade. And from our last discussion, and my opinion hasn't really changed, that I still think that, and that's one of the issues I have, is a lot of the outdoor space, no matter how big you make it, is going to be something hanging off the side of a building. It's really a balcony, but they're, it's just a huge balcony, as was the Prospect project. But anyway, I would still have interest in making the outdoor living space, or at least 300 square feet of it, be on, something like this, not more than X inches off finished grade. So it had to be a deck or a yard. And then the other 150 square feet in the requirement, for example, R2, 300 has to be on grade, and the other 150 can be, a patio or some other second floor outdoor living space. But
if I can just address that. So just to give you an idea of what Hoboken is like, it's relatively, like, each property itself is going to be relatively flat, not going to have certain, slopes, things like that. So my concern about requiring that is if somebody has a deck that comes off and their yard goes out and they still want to have this flat deck, if we're saying 18 inches, then all of a sudden they have to have this really terraced deck that may not be as usable, is what they're looking for. So that is something very particular to the geography of what Hoboken is like.
Okay, well, yeah. Okay, I'm trying to meet my overall goal of strongly encouraging, if not requiring, yards over patios and balconies hanging off the sides of second floors, because what John put together, almost everything's on the first floor, but you lose so much square footage. I can see the developers, everything's going to be on the second floor, so you don't have to have that 50% coverage issue. So anyway, that's just my still continued desire. But but not hearing much. But the last point is, when we do talk about the the total outdoor living space requirements from the development standards, one of the things I want to talk about when I looked over Commissioner Schutzenberg's comment about tying it to the size of the building, so the bigger you make the building, the more outdoor living space you have to provide, is I actually saw other cities that tied it to the lot size. So in our current requirement, a 5,000 square foot typical R1 lot has to provide 800 square feet. And if you have a 7,500 square foot R1 lot, you still have to provide 800 square feet. So I would think that we would want to tie that to the lot size. So if the lot size got bigger, you had to provide, 20% of your lot size in outdoor living space. So when we get to that point, I think that's just something I'd like to investigate. So, anyway, those are all my comments.
Yeah, along with that, Commissioner Hensley and I did discuss this, and we talked about still keeping the 800 as a minimum, but then tying it to lot size as it grew above 20% of lot size as it grew above 800, if that whichever was greater. So, for example, the 5,000 square foot lot would even still be, if we did that at 20%, that would still be 1,000 square feet rather than the 800. And maybe the 20% isn't the exact number we want, but we still want to keep that 800 minimum no matter what, and bump it up accordingly to bigger lots.
Yeah, so but we'd have to get into the development standards to deal with some of that. It's outside of this particular code for outdoor living space.
It is, that's right. And real quick, before I forget to ask this, for Brandy or Sean, you may not know, but I know you're going to our city attorney for guidance on Brown Act stuff. Are we subject to Brown Act on this? Because it's not a hearing?
That's a good question.
Because it would be great to be able to discuss this with more than just one person, because that's really effective offline.
I think you're still going to be subject to it for the sake of, so I don't know if you could sake of it not being a public meeting. So even though it's not a public hearing, it's still a discussion item that if you're having those greater conversations, that expand because you've talked to a couple of people and one of them has talked to a couple of people, now you're going to have an issue of it's considered a public meeting without having had proper notice or access to the public.
Okay. Because I know we decided we didn't have to do ex parte communication declarations on this. Maybe.
Right, but that's because you're not ruling on something. Whereas with the public hearing, even when you're talking about an ordinance and wanting to make the recommendation of city council, that's a public hearing. So so even something along that you're making a recommendation on here, you're going to eventually come to a referral to staff. You're not voting or deciding on this other than to have it be a referral to staff. So that's what that ex parte is regarding is the public hearings.
This is essentially a very large referral to staff item we're discussing.
Right.
Excellent. Do you have anything else, Commissioner Stutzenberg?
Yeah, I think it's time to go back and kind of get a consensus on a couple of. I think we all are in consensus still on with the sheet that's shown here, A, B, and C, and I think as well D. Perhaps D we need to consider if it's too restrictive, but I think we're in consensus as far as A, B, and C under line item 2. And then I would also consider minimum size in one location. Yeah, what's further down under D right now is 300 square foot. perhaps a requirement at least 10 bay in one location. So would we reduce that 300 down to 200? I'd like to see us come to consensus on that, or if anybody really objects to that. I think it doesn't demand that they go lower, but it gives them the flexibility if they could, if they saw a reason to do it.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I actually think the 300 is not that bad, because what we looked at so far has a requirement of 300 or 350 or 450. So it means you have to give 300 in one space and then another for an R2, another 150 somewhere else. So, yeah, I actually think it's okay, and maybe we don't need to reduce it, because I do like, and maybe the other thing we did get consensus on is in Sean's ideas, do we want all the outdoor living space has to be in one location or multiple locations? I think it's one of the things we need to see if we can come to agreement on. But yeah, I prefer the 300. I like the big spaces.
Commissioner Ong.
Yeah, with regard to that question, I think that although I understand Commissioner Stretzenberg's contention that you want to have flexibility, I believe that based on the math, folks are going to gravitate toward the larger areas anyways. If we have a requirement, let's say of like 450, and you make it 200, now you're starting to break them up into small pieces. So
But it doesn't mean they have to do it.
Right. And I'm just and I understand that. Sure would be nice for them to have something larger, but I would be, if the consensus or the majority of the folks here feel that the flexibility would be desired, I wouldn't be adverse to it. I just like the larger number.
Sean, do you see it hurting us or one way or the other, or is it kind of irrelevant almost?
It's really hard to say. I mean, you can see, to Commissioner Ung's point, when it starts to get broken up because of those reduced percentages that you actually are awarded, it takes larger bites out of the square footage. So I think with the developers that we work with, they're not going to be obliged to, go with the multiple layouts that they're not going to get credit for, and they're going to probably gravitate to one larger location, or anything that gets them 100% of the value. They're going to probably try to do.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Arnold on that and staff.
I guess the only thing I would say is that if it was 200, a 200 and a 150 would get you to the 350 of an R3, and you wouldn't lose anything.
Only if they're both off communal space.
As it is now, yeah. So do we want?
You have all 450 on one level. You leave no room for the building.
Maybe we switch to that. Do we want to keep that it needs to be off of a certain area?
I think that makes it a lot more useful if it's only accessible through weird portions of exits or things like that. I think it's less likely to be used than if it's off that communal space. What do other commissioners think about that, though?
Yeah, I also agree with that.
I agree. One thing I did want to ask about is, currently in our current code, and as it's written here, is off the dining room also counts as one, but I don't know why, like living room or kitchen seem okay to me, but something off a dining room, I don't know, it seems odd if it's an actual dining room or actual eat-in kitchen. Does that strike anyone else as odd or less usable, I guess?
I've seen those configurations and they actually are usable in the houses I've seen them in. It's just kind of an overflow of the dining area, but yeah, it's all how people want to use their space. But any type of communal space that I've seen like that does have a more of a flow to it than if it's off a bedroom or something more private.
All right.
If I may, just anecdotally, like where I live, I have a balcony that's off the and it's all an open concept, but it's off that living room. And then I have one that's off the bedroom. Nobody else is going to use the one off the bedroom except me. That's like anybody else staying at the house is going to feel awkward walking through that space to go and hang out on that balcony unless I invite them to. So it's one of those, I think that, and that's just anecdotal, but I think that the bedroom is not something that everybody's going to feel that they can just walk out to and use in that family or in, any visitors.
I'd shove my kids out there in the morning if they came into the bedroom too early.
Yeah, for what it's worth, anyone doing distance learning right now, outdoor patios are a great place to make your kids do PE. So just throwing that out there.
I'm okay leaving it. I saw the opportunity that they could have the flexibility if they wanted it, but I think it's going to end up in the direction that we've talked about anyway, where they're going to tend to do it in one big space, but not always. It's possible. I'm okay either way.
Yeah, I think one important piece to note too is, we're not trying to punish developers here or anything like that. We're trying to encourage them to really design their outdoor living space to be usable, to be real outdoor living space so that residents can take advantage of it and that we don't have these huge, massive structures that don't have usable outdoor space. So that's really our goal here, to create new development that has usable outdoor space that everyone can enjoy. So creative approaches are great. I think, the underlying goal is to have them design something very, if they can be creative with it, fantastic. We just don't want to create loopholes and some of those things that have been abused to this point. So trying to close some loopholes and encourage creativity, really. Seems like the consensus, though, is going that we should keep it at 300 feet. Does anyone else, besides Commissioner Strutzenberg, want to reduce that for B? Sorry, Commissioner Ung?
Oops, I didn't lower my hand, but I did want to address an earlier comment on increasing the square footage in the development standard for the minimum amount. And it would seem that what we've done by removing the bonuses and decrementing them, we've effectively, based on the current standard, have doubled the minimum. It's just that they were getting bonuses, so the effective minimum was about half of what we're now proposing with the decrement. So if we increased it, then it would be more than double, in terms of what the current rules are.
Yep, no, thank you for that. And then Commissioner Hensley's point before I jump to you, I'm still very much in favor of looking at creating actual green space too. So I think that is something worth discussing. I don't know if 30% is the right idea, but I do think, as you see a lot of these developments, there is really no open pervious areas in some of these developments. So you're massively increasing stormwater runoff. There's no groundwater discharge. So there's going to be a lot of water quality issues. There's no infiltration. We didn't get that new infiltration plant along 190th. So as we create these large, completely cemented in buildings and floor plans and lots, that's going from what in a lot of cases has been open dirt for a long time to just flowing right out to the ocean. So I would still be interested in that. But if Commissioner Hensley and I are the only ones, then we can certainly scratch that. But Commissioner Hensley, I see you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on for Commissioner Ung. And maybe Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but even with the changes we made today, we're essentially doubling the space from, we took away or slightly more than doubling. But for those that can meet all the outdoor living space requirements, just through setbacks, there's really no change to those designs, right? So R1, R1A, and R2 in the rear lot or the rear building, those don't have to change at all, even with the changes we're proposing. Do I understand that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Right now, there's no contemplation of dipping into the setback areas or restricting them from being used as qualifying outdoor living space.
Yeah. So, and I'm okay with that. I think the biggest development, unit, they want to stuff their square footage as long as they put it in the back of the lot so you can't see it from the front. I think that's fine, but I just want to caution the other commissioners that, what we see as a result of this, if it goes through and everything goes swimmingly and the first development comes up, be like, oh, that's not what I thought it was going to be. That's bigger than I thought it was going to be. Or, where's my outdoor space? Like, oh, they met it in the setback, or we're still going to have these monstrosity R1 houses, being built. So, not every zoning, not every requirement did we double the outdoor living space with this change we're proposing. So, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stutzenberg.
Yeah, I want to confirm on that, the line that talks about adjacent to living area. We took away living area in this current verbiage. Is that what we want to do? Because the current code says kitchen, dining room, living room, or similar communal area. But here we just say kitchen, dining. Right there, they had it. It was
here?
Right under, in item D, 2D, it says if space is not next to a kitchen or dining area. Did we want to take out living or similar communal area that is currently in the code? I don't think we do.
I don't think so. I think that's what the discussion was. So I just wrote it, I typed it up that way. But I think it was that concept of all of that communal area.
Okay, so what we did there is instead of giving them a bonus of 200%, and we're actually potentially detrimenting it if it's not next to it. Okay. But we did want to still include living room and similar communal area verbiage, like the current code says, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hensley.
Sorry, got to lower my hand.
No problem at all. So on B then, do we have consensus to stay with 300 square feet and not include the 20% of the building square footage, whichever is greater, but striking the bonuses because we're not offering bonuses anymore? Is that, anyone have any objection to that?
I'm good with it.
Okay, so B would read essentially the blue would just be 300 square feet, and we would strike the or 20% of the building square footage, whichever is greater, and including bonuses, we already had consensus on, that's getting struck. That's an even better way of doing it.
I don't have a way to edit this at the moment.
Is that clear enough though?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. That takes us then to 1A. So I think we have consensus on the 15 feet. And do we have consensus on the private balconies, or do we want to have that distinction? There's some disagreement there. Anyone have a strong preference or want to make a case one way or the other?
I just wanted to clarify, Cheryl, that our current code makes a distinction between patios and decks have a minimum dimension of 10 by 10 and private balconies have a minimum dimension of 5 by 10. And so all I did was say, okay, we said 15 by 10 is a minimum, so that's what as it's written. But in the code as it exists today, you get your 200% bonus at 10 by 15, but your minimum size is 10 by 10 for a patio or deck. So.
No, thank you for the clarifying point.
Yeah.
Anyone have any thoughts or concerns? Do we want to adopt it with the language in blue? Seems like we have consensus there, unless anyone objects.
No, let me just ask a question. So, John, one thing when I read this is some of the projects that have come through have really just been like, 12-foot by 19-foot balconies, meeting all of their 350 square feet requirement. Is there a reason that there's some distinction, or that like we can't, basically I don't want huge, or, maybe we want to dissuade huge balconies. Is there some other way that we could word that, or some other, it seems a little odd with the way we're calculating things and to make this distinction, but that there's really no distinction, I think, in what is provided.
Yeah, in how it's laid out currently and what we're looking at in terms of amendments, we're not specifying, its location on grade or as deck, raised deck or balcony. Although we do have a distinction between patio and balcony. But there's nothing specific that's we're putting these dimensions in place, but it's largely at the discretion of the designer to actually lay it out in terms of its size and how it's accessed. There's no articulation in here of if it's on grade or elevated on a story.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't have a strong opinion. I would love for some way to discourage huge patios, but other than that, I don't have a strong opinion.
No, I would agree with Commissioner Hensley. Doesn't seem like anyone has a strong opinion on this one.
Maybe we'll try it at 15 by 10 since that's our minimum, and 5 by 10 for a balcony. And just another point, I am interested at some point in the future to get designers' feedback based on whatever we come up with, and if council agrees and says, yeah, that sounds good, I would be very interested in having developer come back and show us what they would make with those requirements, so we could see what this would be interpreted as. So I know staff has put that out there and at the last meeting, and I would be interested in just seeing what they would come up with based on whatever language we can agree on, and see if it at all matches what we envision it to look like.
Yeah, and I think that type of working session is definitely useful because architects can see things that we can't, and they have a lot of ideas around how to do this the right way. We just have to make sure we also see how to look at it the wrong way, so that we're not inadvertently creating new loopholes or anything like that. Commissioner Tuppero.
Yeah, we had this discussion at the last meeting and about who are the it wasn't the shareholders, but the what do you call it?
Stakeholder.
The stakeholders. Thank you. The stakeholders, and we made comments to the effect that we don't want the developers to really be the ones putting their I think architects is good, and of course the general public, the residents. These are really the stakeholders here, not the developers, because if we let the developers run, tell us what they think, then they're just going to beat us right into just the monsters. So
yeah, maybe architect is a better term. I would like to see what would be built based on this requirement.
I just wanted to just remind
Okay.
everyone that we had that discussion, and I think we have to step gingerly here.
So it sounds like we have consensus to adopt the language as Commissioner Hensley has drafted it for item A. Is that fair for everyone? Okay. That then takes us now to C1B2, the minimum dimensions of 5 feet by 10 feet. Does anyone have any objection to that language? I think we had consensus on that before, but just to confirm. If there's no objections, then I think we're all in agreement there. Next item is under 3. And that's where I think we'd all agreed last time as well. We want to eliminate these bonuses that are being abused. Is 75% the number we're comfortable with there? I don't hear any objections, so we will move forward with that recommendation. And then it was also brought up that we can strike that next item there, the 200% bonus, but do we want to actually make it explicit that there's a 100% bonus for a certain size? Or can we leave that unstated? And I might rely on staff for some feedback on that.
Yeah, I think because at this point, if you don't have language addressing the larger, it's only saying, if you're a 7 by 10, you're at 75, and it doesn't give you any other option. So I would say just, mimicking this language, minimum dimensions of 10 by 15 feet and are located, do we have anything with that one?
So instead of a bonus of 200%, it would just be, say, 100% credit of actual areas.
Yeah,
like
and located immediately adjacent are counted at 100% of actual area.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So instead of striking that section out, it would just be, a credit of 100%, essentially.
That way it's kind of bookended. Mhm.
Yeah, we make it explicit.
Yeah, you just take the exact same wording
Yeah.
and replace 7 by 10 by 10 by 15 and 75% of replace it with 100%.
Exactly.
Anyone have any objections to that? Perfect. That next brings us to porous pavement. I think we were all in agreement on that. Anyone have any objections?
Maybe just a clarification for staff. Porous pavement could be gravel or pavers or even some cement things are porous.
Mm-hmm.
Would they meet that?
Yes.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be green or dirt or
No, it's more for the drainage.
water runoff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Commissioner
Again-
Sparksburg.
Yeah, and just to point out, we are only talking about public exterior courts, pools, and activity areas here, right? Everybody's clear on that's all this is applying to.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what's in the coastal zone. I mean, we can talk about moving to other places, but I just copied it from the coastal zone language, which also is only under exterior courts, pools, activity areas.
You don't want a porous roof deck?
Good job security for construction firms.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay. That was it. Just making sure we all understood that was a very limited application there.
Yes. Yeah, and all we're doing here is synchronizing coastal with inland. But yeah, to Commissioner Hensley's point, I would be interested in seeing that being encouraged in all the outdoor, well, not all the outdoor, obviously it's not going to work with a deck, but yeah, I'd still be interested in seeing that as well, if anyone else has appetite for that. That brings us next to 5A. So do we want to, so this is our 75% of the actual area for a minimum of 10. Is everyone comfortable with this for setbacks? Or do we want 100% for setbacks, or is there any consensus there?
I don't think 75% will have any impact.
Yeah, maybe the first question is, do we want to give a decrement for using your setback, side or rear setback, to meet outdoor living space? And, if you look at the R2 example, you can meet 600 square feet with just the rear setback, and the requirement's only 450. So to Commissioner Schutzenberg's point, you'd almost have to cut it in half to make the developer put more open space than just the rear setback for an R2, typical R2. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
When you put accessory structures or things like that, even if it's a shed or something minimal, does that reduce your outdoor living space, or do people generally just do that unpermitted anyway, or how would that affect setbacks in that outdoor living space calculation?
It removes them. It removes the square footage that you're calculating as outdoor living space if you're putting an accessory structure out there.
And in
But
your,
you'll never know if they do it or not, because that's usually after the planning is done and gone and the thing is built. So it's kind of hard to control.
And things like that don't require a permit a lot of times.
Right, yeah.
and even when they do, people sometimes don't get them. So yeah, that doesn't really impact it then.
I guess I always seen the rear setback as like a buffer zone to the next property. And I'd like to keep it as a real buffer zone. And therefore discourage using just that to meet outdoor living space.
Well, if we did cut it to...
It would take a big decrement to make it effective. It would have to be at least 50% decrement. Because, for example, in this one, the 40 by 15, that's 600. And even if it was 50%, you're still getting 300 out of it.
Yeah, but it means you have to come with 150 somewhere else.
Yes.
And to get 100% credit, you're basically making a 10 by 15 deck off of a communal area. Is
Yes.
your cheapest, quote unquote, cheapest way to get there.
Yes.
That's not terrible, but I'm not worried. But I have to think it through because it would apply to R1, it would apply to R1A, it would apply to everything. So it may make sense in an R2 case, but doesn't make sense in every zoning case.
Well, for example, we do roof decks at 15% for everything, right, Sean? Is that? Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And part of that reasoning, I think, is that everybody wants a roof deck anyway, so we weren't going to give them big bonus for, or big credit for that. Encourage it to be other places.
Yeah.
So,
Sean, can we do a rough calculation on a standard R1 lot if we gave a 50% credit for the rear setback? What that would look like?
Yeah, let's
Maybe we can come back because I know that's a little bit of calculation, but maybe.
That's actually the last item language here that we need consensus
Let me
on.
see here.
Also, I was wondering, should side setbacks be treated the same way as rear setbacks? I can see the case with the rear setbacks that if you might want to decrement it because you don't want, that's kind of a gimme. But if someone is trying to, because it would be only special cases, I would say, things like corner lots in which someone has a side setback that they could make, deeper or, wider. And it would seem to me that, that you might want to consider the entire area, as outdoor living space, especially if it's not designed as a walkway that wouldn't count. I was just wondering, commissioners' thoughts on whether we see side setbacks and rear setbacks, the same or different.
I would agree with Commissioner Stretzenberg that setbacks are a good way of having a buffer, but you're required to have a significant rear setback already. Side setbacks usually aren't that significant, so I wouldn't want to discourage anyone from having a larger side setback by decrementing the percentage it would count as necessarily. But I don't know, just my thoughts. Commissioner Hensley.
Just a comment. I think for typical R2, R3, yeah, I would agree the side setback probably shouldn't be decremented. But I think if you look at the, what was the townhouse project, the 36 units, the Foundry, I think for some of his units, he actually used the side setback and just moved the building away and then used that as his yard space. So on bigger projects, you probably get more side setback to use as yards. So, but yeah, at this point, I'd be, if we wanted to just decrement the rear setback percentage, I'd be in favor of that.
yeah, and I'm only talking about the required minimum be decremented. Anything, let's say they did a 20-foot setback, only 15 foot of that would be decremented. And the same thing for a side setback. If they did 8, for example, only 5 of it would be decremented.
But no, it has to be 10 feet to count, Commissioner Tutzelberg. So you can't count your 5-foot setback, side setback. Right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's got to have a minimum
Yeah.
width.
Minimum 10 feet.
Well, but if they set the building back 10 foot from the property line and 5 foot of that was required setback and the other 5 foot was not required, would we therefore allow them to use that entire 10 right up to the property line and get full credit for it? That's the question. I don't
Currently,
think.
yes.
Currently we do.
Yes.
But to Chair Elder's point is, if you decrement it, I think the 10-foot side setback is great, and you're basically discouraging it by discrediting it in the calculation. So people are less likely to do it.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
So it sounds like we may have consensus around decrementing the rear setback, but not the side setbacks. Just, I guess, as a show of hands, and I can't see everyone, who's comfortable with decrementing the rear setback? I'm gonna jump through here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it looks like we have consensus around, or mostly consensus around decrementing the rear. What about the side setbacks? Who's comfortable with decrementing the side setbacks?
One.
Thought I saw Commissioner Berg's hand, but I could be wrong. Yes, I think we have consensus around the rear setback, but not the side setback for now. So for the question then becomes, for the rear setback, is 75% the right number? Which, and as was pointed out, that doesn't necessarily do a lot for a lot of zones, or do we want 50%? Anyone have a strong opinion there?
Sean, were you going to check a typical width of an R1?
I mean, taking a 50 by 100 square foot lot, you have a 20-foot rear setback, so you're going to have 1,000 square feet in the rear yard with the setback. So
it's a 20 foot in R1?
it's 20%.
20%. Okay.
Yeah, of the lot depth.
Oh,
So that's
Minimum.
okay. So, but that would give you 1,000 square feet, and the requirement is 800. So if we did decrement 50%, they would only be able to count 500 square feet towards their 800. So that's provided another 300
somewhere else.
correct.
I'm right now, I'm thinking about those tall, skinny R1As in which, they're 25 by 100. If you were to decrement their 20 foot backyards, and virtually all of them have driveways in the front, I'm just trying to figure out how you would meet their outdoor living requirements if it's decremented.
Yeah, R1A is 400 square foot requirement, I believe. And so the rear setback is what's the R1A rear setback? 15?
It's 16 feet, and then minimum of 10, no less than 10. But if you go 16 times 25, you get exactly 400 square feet.
400. So if Commissioner Hung, if we did decrement it, for easy numbers, 50%, then they would get 200 square feet in their rear setback, and then they would have to come up with another 200 square feet of patio or balcony. So R1A is probably the most impacted by 50%.
Yes.
What if we did you counted it at 60%? So in the R2 example, your 600 square feet in the back would be counted at
360.
360, and your requirement's 450, so you have to give just another 90 square feet somewhere. And if you did one balcony off a bedroom, counted at 75%, you would probably meet it. And 60% of a R1, instead of 1,000, you count 600, so they have to provide 200 square feet somewhere else. R1A would be, you'd get 240 out of the rear, so you need to provide another 160 square feet somewhere else. So R1A is probably the most impacted, but, rough numbers, I think above 50 and less than 75 is probably where I think it should be.
It's also worth noting there's a lot of R1 that's still single story. So if they do build any type of outdoor deck, it's going right into their existing outdoor living space anyway. So that doesn't help them. So in that situation, where would they do rooftop, or how would we do that? for
A balcony? Well, I guess good to have a balcony, but
Yeah, they don't have the option for anything they would do because they can't do it in the front.
you can do it in interior, like some portico, not portico, but what's it called? The courtyard, yeah.
Essentially, all your 1 stories will get torn down.
Yeah.
They
Well,
already are.
Well, you're just encouraging it.
Yeah, I was actually quite shocked at the corner of Serpentine and Halberta, south over by Alta Vista Park. They actually did a whole new remodel, and it's a single-story house. And I was just flabbergasted. I said, "Oh my God, somebody did a single story." So there's hope.
Yeah, and I don't want to discourage that by requiring them to somehow build additional outdoor living space when their yard was the only outdoor living space, and now we're cutting that. So I don't know if we're
But they could give them more of a side yard, right? If you went side yard from 5 foot or 8 foot to 10 foot, and you had 10 foot by 100 foot all the way down the side of the house, that would meet your outdoor living space requirement.
well, what would they have to do that would trigger this and it wouldn't be grandfathered with whatever they had? What's the threshold for that?
Well, if they did an addition on an existing home, they couldn't encroach into the development standard for outdoor living space. So we would do a total, of what they have for outdoor living space, looking at that, and as long as their addition didn't reduce it to less than what's required, they can do it. It's
What's
just
required or what's existing?
what's required if we change the standard. And even the current standards, we apply them to an addition to a home.
Chairman, that's a question, because I think to Commissioner Stretzenberg's point, he was saying really that's that wanting to, have a buffer, right? And my question is, do we feel that the buffer is not being met with the R1, R1A utilizing that? Because you could put some language in here that's specific to the discounting in the R2, R3, RH. Just a thought for that rear yard.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of the example that somebody from the public brought to us. I don't remember who it was, but about the pergola that got built into the rear setback. And
I'm just to caution you, that's coming before you next month. So I wouldn't want you to discuss that particular.
point taken.
So hypothetically, yes, I'm just curious how we can have language in there, because I agree that 100% bonus, most developments would meet that without needing to do anything. So I agree that we need to do something there. I'm just concerned about how we protect single story or things like that where they don't have those options.
Yeah, so I have the suggestion. So instead of the blue language that's there, taking that out, keeping the language that's in the existing code, and then adding at the end, use of required rear setbacks shall be counted at whatever percentage of the actual area. And you could say, if you wanted to have it at 50% of the actual area for R2, R3, RH, and 75% for R1, R1A. But just to, you guys pick the numbers, but I'm just giving you kind of the language that could.
We can specify.
Yeah.
And is there something we could do to specify for single story versus multi-story development? Would that be anything standard? Or is
That's going to be a little more difficult, because if somebody wants to come in and do an addition where they are now building a second story over a single, that may be difficult. Now you're creating issues that may not, we may not even know how to address them at that point.
Can I ask a question? So if someone wanted to build something and they were going to encroach on their space, which is not common, but it's not uncommon, wouldn't they just go through like a variance process like they get before us quite frequently of, I have a garage that's in my rear setback and I want to build something else, and we have to approve a variance or some other deviation?
They could, however, there'd have to be circumstances that would warrant it. The lot would have to, let's say, already have some extenuating circumstances like slope,
Right. Okay.
yeah, or narrowness, or extremely small depth.
Okay. Yeah, I would be open to, at this point, just saying R2, R3 can't use the rear setback and leaving R1 and R1A alone for now.
I would be open to that.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Is there at a percentage or?
So I guess the first question is, is there consensus about leaving R1 and R1A alone? So I guess just quick show of hands, who's okay with leaving R1 and R1A alone? Let's see. Okay, so it looks like we want to leave those alone. So then the next question is, what percentage do we want to use for R2 and above? Who wants to throw a number out?
Well, what does staff would recommend, I guess?
Well, we could do the math again. So what do we have for a setback for our R2 first? Average 15, minimum 10. So let's say, I guess maybe.
You'd use the 15.
Yeah, use the 15.
Times the width.
Times the width, we'll do 50. So you have 750 square feet to start in the rear yard.
And the requirement's 450, right?
And the requirement's 450.
For R2. And for R3, it's only 350.
Correct.
So you would still meet it all in an R3. You wouldn't quite meet it with an R2 at 50% with that example.
That's correct. You'd still have 75 feet to acquire.
Which they could do with just going with a little bit deeper setback, because anything beyond the minimum of 15 would count as 100%. So if they did another 2 feet, for example, they would get another 100 square feet at full credit. Because it's only, I'm only looking at decrementing in the required setback.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sean, in practice, are the R2s and R3s using the rear setback as
Oh yeah.
As this is it, and I'm fully building the rest of it?
Yes, in most cases. But you know what?
50%.
I mean,
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so at 100% way it is now, they just overshoot. They end up with a bunch of extra area for that one, for the rear unit.
yes.
So that's why I'm saying if it's not at 50% or more, it's not really going to be meaningful. It won't really change. It would a little bit on R2 perhaps. But R3 wouldn't have any effect even at 50%.
And that's where you might need to look at even having different for each zone. So 40%, for example, for R3 or something like that, if that was the direction we wanted to go.
I think at least for kind of stake in the ground, I think 50% for R2 and R3 is where I would be comfortable.
6-0 or 5-0?
5-0.
5-0.
For the sake of consensus, how does everyone feel about 50% for R2 and above? Just a quick show of hands.
Yeah.
I think we have general consensus there, but I'm curious, does anyone else have another number they would pick?
Well, my number would be lower even than 50, so I don't know if anybody else would be in favor of that.
Throw it out there, let's see.
So let's say 30%.
Yeah, sure.
Please keep your hand up. I got to.
Sorry, let me ask a question real quick. Sean, what would that calculate be? Can you go?
Yeah.
Let's calculate.
So we have 15 times 50. Okay, we're at 750, and then let's see, 30% times. Okay, that's 225 square feet.
And you need 450. So
You need 450 in the R2, 350 in the R3.
What's 40%?
375.
300.
I say
No.
we stick with 50.
I've got a quick question. Just because I haven't myself reviewed these applications. For like visitor parking, is that ever allowed to be in that rear setback or no?
No.
Okay, just want to make sure it wouldn't be utilized as something else.
Don't R2s, like 2 on a lot R2s, have that one visitor spot back against the rear unit?
No.
It's not in the backyard? It's up to
No,
it?
no. And it's got to be 3 units or more for that to kick in.
Oh, okay.
Do you even get a car back there? You have to have a route to do it. A crane, maybe.
And that's why everybody parks on the street. That's because they don't want to do the maneuvering in their big Escalades.
All right.
I'm sorry, what was the 40%?
40 comes out at 300 feet.
And how many is required?
350 for R3 and 450 for R2.
And again, that's using the 50 foot width,
Correct.
which is roughly standard. But the 40 foot you showed was for an R2.
Yes, that last one was R2, 40 feet. So let's see what a 40 times 15 is. 40 times 15.
You'd end up with 240 at 40%, or at 60. At 40%, you'd end up with
600 feet total on the 40-foot wide lot. And if you take 50%, so what did I say, 600, 40 times 15, okay, that's 600. And then 600 times 40% is 240. 50% is 300. So on the 40-foot wide lot, you're requiring some additional outdoor living space
which you had done in your examples, because you showed it in both units. So it's definitely doable.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting from, I'm sorry, Commissioner Schutzmer, go ahead.
That's great. No. Right.
So I was going to say, what I'm getting from this is that it kind of depends on the zoning and the lot size and the big and the small. The number doesn't always fit. What if we went the other way and said, you can achieve no more than 75% of your required outdoor living space with your rear setback, whatever your rear setback size is. So if your requirement's 350, you can only meet 75% of that number with your rear setback. If you have 450 requirement, you can only meet 75% of that number with whatever rear setback you have. So no matter how big the lot gets, you're only meeting 75% or some number of your requirement, 350, 450, whatever it is, with your setback.
So it's proportional to,
proportional to bigger requirements and bigger lots.
And it's more equitable too, in a way, being proportional.
Yeah, very equitable.
I like that.
I like that too.
So the one concern I would have with that is that, again, would discourage any single story development, because their only outdoor living space can be what's essentially setbacks.
Well, but R2 and we're only talking R2 and R3 still.
Right.
And no one's building single story anymore anyway.
Yeah.
I can dream, right?
Well, if you have a single house on an R2 lot, no matter how big the lot is, you still have to meet the single unit R2 zoning, which is 800 square feet. Right.
Correct.
This is for 2 units on a R2 zone or 3 units on a or whatever. So
A single house always requires 800.
Yeah.
Correct.
Everywhere.
Correct.
So what if we think that's equitable direction, then what number, is 80% of 450 easy your math? I'm just trying to get a little something on the house, whether it's a balcony or a deck or something on the actual house,
And that's where I was headed with it too. To not just rely only on that rear setback, to put something else in there that will help reduce the structure, I guess, is where I'm headed with.
Does have any recommended language on how we could achieve that?
and we may need to tweak it a little bit, but I have, taking out the blue language that you had added, just add at the end of that subsection, use of required rear setbacks may be counted for no more than whatever percentage of the total outdoor living space required for that unit in R2, R3, and RH districts.
RH wouldn't have a rear setback of the yard, would it? Wouldn't that be a 3 or 4 story?
So it wouldn't require.
Yeah.
So
I think
it
it's just
would
R2 and R3.
Well, an RH only requires 200.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of the
Yeah, we need to
total
get to that point next. I think probably just R2 and R3 would be. So if it's 80%, just throwing out a number, and the 450 requirement, so you would need 90 square feet somewhere on the house. So, not a huge amount, but if it's off a bedroom, you're going to get decremented, 50%. So you need 10 by, you need a really big balcony off a bedroom to meet 90 square feet for an R2.
Or if it happens to be the mythical single story, you would need some side yard setbacks.
Yeah. They can always just make the rear setback bigger, as Commissioner Strutzenberg said. So 90 square feet off of a living room would be easy to meet because you get you 100%. 10 by 10 would get you what you need.
Mm-hmm.
So probably what they would do, right, John? Like you would make a 10 by 10.
Well, 10 by 10 would only count at 75% though.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's true.
So 12 by 12 probably then, or 10 by 15. Yeah, probably a 10 by 15 off of the. There are so many levers to pull.
And this is only municipal code too. That's the other thing to keep in mind. There's a lot of places we can address this, but the devil's in the details.
Your 10 by 12 actually gets you 90 feet at 75%.
Mm-hmm. And that's not that bad. That's reasonable.
So how about in the R3, if the requirement's 350, if we use 80%, that means you need to provide 70 square feet on the house. So, 10 by 10 at 75% would get you there.
So we're going with 80% of the total required. It can count for no more than 80% of the total required outdoor living space for that adjacent unit.
Yeah, for the other commissioners, do we want a smaller than 10 by 15 patio? Then I think 80% is a good number. If we want bigger, then we need to lower that number.
I say no smaller. I mean, the whole idea is to create better space.
So when you're saying no smaller, you're actually saying no smaller for the extra space, not no smaller on the percentage.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Because I was just thinking, since we're doing everything in multiples of 25, just making it 75%.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
For R2 and R3, no more than 75% of the rear setback, required rear setback shall count towards the total.
Yeah, I'm good.
The rear setback shall not count for more than 75% of the total outdoor living space required.
Is it the required rear setback or the total rear setback?
Required.
Okay.
Required.
So they could, so like we were talking before, they could actually make the setback a little bit bigger, and anything over the 15 feet would count as 100%.
Yep, absolutely. No, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable to do.
Yes, I think
It is. I'm sorry, I must say that.
Say that again, you said?
Yeah.
So if let's say they went 17 feet instead of 15, the 15 foot would be at.
Oh, right.
But the 2 foot strip would count Well, except, but it wouldn't count the side setbacks then, because your side setback, you'd have to take off your side setbacks.
No, they can utilize those, right?
Yes, they can.
Okay, so it'd be the full width of the lot. Let's say it's a 50-foot lot. If you add another 2 feet of setback, you've got your 100 feet right there.
Yeah.
So is it clear that if you added, let's say in this scenario, an extra 2 feet of setback, that's okay because it's less than 5 feet? In other words, what we're saying is because it's contiguous with the actual rear setback, it doesn't have to meet the 5-foot minimum.
Good point. That's the intention, but the verbiage should support that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm understanding that point. Can you?
Okay. Yeah. So let's say that the minimum rear setback is 15 feet.
Right.
And now you're saying, I'm going to make it 19 feet. So 15 is what's required, but I've only added an additional 4 feet, and we made a claim saying that it has to be 5 feet to count. The intent is that since it's contiguous with the 15 feet, that we want it to count. However, in and of itself, the way that things are worded, the fact is it's only 4 feet, so it doesn't count.
So you're talking about like the width of the
Additional setback.
the width. I get that. The width of the open space has a requirement of a minimum 5.
But
is
only
what
a
you're
balcony.
saying.
But only a balcony.
That's only balcony. It requires 10 feet. So it's clear because if they're utilizing the required and the additional, they're going to have the width because they're just going to demonstrate the outside of. So they're going to demonstrate the width.
Okay. If it's clear to you, that's.
It's just what counts and what doesn't. We put the required, in this language, its use of the required rear setbacks may be counted for no more than 80% or whatever, if you decide 75% of the total required outdoor space for that adjacent unit.
Maybe put required average setback.
No, it's not setback. It's the required rear setback because
that's right. Right.
If they average it, that's what's required, right? Is their what's required. You don't have. I don't think you need to specify it in any other way other than what's required because it will be required.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't concerned about how we account for the minimum setback. It was to make sure that the additional setback that we wish to count for 100%, can be counted as 100%, even though by itself it doesn't meet the requirement because it's less than 5 feet wide.
You want it contiguous is what you're saying, and maybe we need to put that language in there to clarify.
Yeah.
I don't think so because you're still going to have the width. So if it's not like they're going to say, well, here's one outdoor space, and then we're adding in, here's this additional one, and they're separated. They're all going to be one, and here's the dimensions of this outdoor space. Yeah.
Okay. If it's clear to you, since you're the ones that are going to have to interpret it and yay or nay it.
Yes.
But,
I guess the question is it 75% or 80%? Or other? I don't mean to limit you.
Let's do a quick show of hands then. Who's comfortable with 75%? Okay, so I think we've got consensus on 75%.
I think so.
All right.
Okay.
It does just enough to trigger them to do something else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, less weaseling, right?
Yeah, so they'd need 88 out of 350, and they'd need 113 out of 450 more. So.
Yeah, and as I think you made a really good point, Commissioner Strutzenberg, about, yes, they have to do something else, but it could be as easy as increasing that setback by a bunch, and they're there. So, so I think that makes sense. All right, I think we've hit the language. Do you want me to run through it real quick?
And do you mind reviewing that?
Yeah, so the revisions will be, hold on, I've got my calculator up. I got to get that out of the way. Going back up to the top there. Okay.
Okay.
It will, we're removing the or 20% of the building square footage, whichever is greater. So it'll be a minimum area of 300 square feet and a minimum dimension of 10 feet, because we are going to keep the, and then the next one under A, that we're keeping that as written. Under B, 2 and 3 are going to be as written. And then we're going to add a 4, which is minimum dimensions of 10 feet by 15 feet and located immediately adjacent to either a kitchen, dining room, living room, or similar communal area shall be counted at 100% of the actual area. All right, and then the next, we're going to keep that with the porous pavement. And the last change will be under that number 5 there. We're removing the blue language. And at the end of that subsection, we're adding the sentence, use of required rear setbacks may be counted for no more than 75% of the total required outdoor living space for that adjacent unit.
You want to
For
specify
R2 and R3.
R2 and R3.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. I had it in a different space. So in R2 and R3 districts. Thank you.
No,
And just a comment. Yeah, I agree with all the points. I think it's a great summary, and I think those of us here know that we're talking about section, 2.503 or 5013 or the other part of the code. But others who read this may think it's talking about the 300 square feet. So just a point of clarification when the actual language should come about, that the minimum outdoor living space as required in the development standards or whatever that other section is called, I think would help clarify it.
I'm not sure. You want to restate that? Did anybody get that? I didn't quite get that.
You're just suggesting that when we're presenting this, that we make this clarification that we're not changing the overall required, but this is about what the minimum of one minimum size has to be, or one space has to be this minimum size.
Yeah, so my apologies for unclear. Let me try one more time. As you stated, it is clear to all of us here, but city council or others reading it will think with the language as you've written it that it may be 75% of the 300 square feet in this section of the municipal code, when actually it's referencing 75% of the development standard number. So all I'm saying is that, when you say...
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So the total required outdoor living space for that unit.
As required in...
As required by the zoning development standard.
Yes, thank you.
Required.
That's a good catch.
Now I get it.
That's a good clarification.
Sorry.
And then one more thing on that. Do we want to include R3A and RMD, because those are the same as R3 in scope for outdoor living space?
I actually don't know what R3A is. Can someone tell me what that is?
They run along the coastal corridor. I don't know what the difference is in them, but
Yeah, there's no other difference.
And then RMD, we just have a few RMDs.
Are they built? Yeah, let me ask then, Sean. For my information, are RMDs built like R3s, like 3 on a lot type things? Are they like the Foundry type big lot units? What does the RMD look like?
You know, it's just it's a higher density standard, but let me.
Yeah, I'm looking at the perspective as the required outdoor living space is 350 across the board for R3, R3A, and RMD. For anything over single family. So I would think we would want to apply that same standard to not only R3 but R3A and RMD.
Okay, so do you want me to reread this one?
Does everybody agree with that first, or do we have any other input?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
It makes sense to me. I would agree with that.
I only know that because I happened to just go through them real quick before the meeting. So,
Okay. Use of required rear setbacks may be counted for no more than 75% of the total required outdoor living space for that adjacent unit in R2, R3, R3A, and RMD districts as required by the zone development standards. And I'll put this code section.
Anyone have any objection to that language? Or thoughts?
do we need? Think about that. Do we need that last part? Because
I think the clearer we make it, the better.
yeah, I hesitate to tie it to actual code sections because do those change over time?
Probably not.
Well, I think it'd be. Oh, you mean the code section numbers?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
That's all I was thinking of, just using the title. So, because everyone has their own section.
What was the zone? Is it development standards? I don't have it in front of me.
yeah, it is. They're the development standards.
Okay, then we'll just put the zone development standards.
Outdoor living space development standards.
Oh, zones, outdoor living space development standards.
Yes.
Good. One more time?
Yeah.
Okay. Use of the required rear setbacks may be counted for no more than 75% of the total required outdoor living space for that adjacent unit in R2, R3, R3A, and RMD districts as required by the zone's outdoor living space development standards.
It's worth noting you've triggered a little known insert into our code that when you repeat something 3 times, it becomes lost. So we've actually done this now.
We're all done.
I'm not anybody voting though. Does it matter who says it?
I would maybe instead of as required, as specified, or does that make a difference? Maybe it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Language, anyone have any?
Going once,
Yeah.
going twice.
Yeah. One. Sorry.
We need a roll
Just a
call.
quick question. No, quick clarification. In what's proposed on the screen for the requirements is, calculations in R1, R1A, R2, R3, R3A, and RMD. RH is not included in this 1510 or mixed use.
Doesn't look like it.
But I thought that the title says mixed use zones, but
Yeah.
It does. They have a standard.
It's a good catch also, yeah.
Yeah, let's see.
is there a different mixed use? Because isn't the same outdoor living space, like, I think 1510 is there an inland one and a coastal one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll need it. We'll make sure know that it's going to
Yeah,
be for both.
Okay.
Just to confirm, we had a moratorium on mixed-use development. That's expired now, hasn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought so. That was years ago. But just wanted to confirm.
We have no housing moratorium. We have a certified housing element.
think they're illegal now anyway. Moratorium.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, they are.
to your point, Matt, it's only B that calls out those. Everything else except for B would apply to mixed use zones and anything else.
Oh, okay. So just the minimum
But
requirement.
it's just that minimum area requirement is only applied to those specific zones.
Okay, so let me just
The
make
rest of it
clarification.
would apply to everything.
Yeah, and the one thing I want to not protect against, but just confirm maybe, I'm good with this for, R2s, R3s, everything we've kind of talked about, but let me just confirm. So if you have a mixed use project, then I'll use, Legato or Seabreeze or something of that size, and you have these kind of apartment style, they're going to be required to give 200 square feet because that's within the development standard, but they're going to be penalized at 50% because it's not off, if they don't put it off communal space, right?
That's correct. But typically now, the Legato is a good example. Almost, I don't know what the percentage is, but almost all of it is satisfied by their pool area, public courtyard area. There's limits on that, but big chunk of that is credited from their public spaces. Not public, but, the communal spaces, pools and pool deck, indoor.
But each condo has some sort of outdoor space.
Yeah, they do. Yes.
Okay, and just when we go further down the road, it may be something I want to investigate or confirm just how this impacts those projects that we haven't really talked about up till now. So, but anyway, okay. So thank you.
Yeah, so I think we've correctly applied it now because basically we've repeated the list from B where it specified just those zones, but we've taken off R1 and R1A, which we wanted to
Right.
do. I think we're good.
Excellent. So do we need a roll call vote on this?
I would say you may want to do a recommendation of the changes presented to take to just having the direction to take that to City Council. Since we have this as an agendized item, recommendation to take that to City Council for consideration of revising the ordinance.
Is there a motion to make a recommendation of the revised language to City Council? Commissioner Schutzenberg.
We're willing to make that motion, but I want to clarify, do we need to provide some other supplementary explanation for this as to why we're doing it
I'm good with that. We can write that down.
can staff create that and summarize the reasoning behind this or?
You want to give me some bullets and then I can cover.
The rest of the commission see that as beneficial to taking it? Because if we just dump it on City Council, they'll be like, well, why did they do this?
Yeah.
We know
I think
why
it's
they did it.
I think it's essential.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, we wanted to, about the quality of life and maintaining open space.
Yeah, I've reached out individually to every City Council member, but I haven't had any in-depth discussion with them. So I think it's important for them to understand why this is even coming up at all.
And when it's going to get published as going to the City Council in the agenda, and the public is going to want to know this too before the City Council meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that it's,
As Wayne said, essential.
well, if I take this to the City Council and all I say is that the Planning Commission has this recommendation that you make these changes, they're going to say why. And that's what, I think if you can provide just a couple of bullet points, I can certainly, and actually you could include that in your motion.
Yeah, so maybe with the other commissioners, let's talk about, see if we can list out 5, things that we can agree on. And I don't know if Commissioner Tupperell wants to use, curse words to describe the size of some projects.
FQMs. Just
Yeah.
for the new commissioners, an FQM is a Queen Mary. Because these structures are like having a Queen Mary park next to you.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe the first bullet point is, the Planning Commission has seen projects come before it that meet the letter of the outdoor living space requirement, but are far from the intention of as the commission sees it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Hold please.
I'd try to put a positive spin on it, like in support of greater quality of life for new development.
And also adding clarity, really, so that developers know what to expect and residents know what to expect. So we're making things a little more black and white and not having to fall back on the general plan for consistency.
Yeah. Yeah, so let me see if I can summarize what I heard from First Commissioner Strutzenberg. So maybe the overarching thing is, the purpose for this change is to improve the residents' quality of life and their livability or their enjoyment of living in the city with the new development that's occurring. Did I capture that right?
Yeah, I think quality of life is that buzzword that everyone likes to.
There's probably something that we can pull out of the city charter. There's like the I'm trying to look that up right now, but right, we have a city charter, and when we did the branding of the city, there were all the buzzwords, and I thought if we can lift some of those buzzwords, then that could kind of help. That we're marching along with the overall plan. So I'm trying to find the city charter here, but I'm having a hard time finding it. But you know what I'm saying, right?
I thought Chairman Elder explained it at the beginning when he was explaining it to the new commissioners very eloquently. If you remember what you said.
Yeah, I mean, essentially just trying to make it clear that we're doing this because I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it, but we're doing this because there are a number of projects which are inconsistent and incompatible with the neighborhood. And while they meet our municipal code and our design guidelines, they're not consistent and they do affect quality of life. So rather than falling back on the general plan consistency, and which is more of a gray area, putting it in black and white in our municipal code makes it easier to really put boundaries on these projects, because again, we only hear a small percentage of these. There's so many of these which just get approved administratively. So having this out there for the entire city is going to resolve a lot of quality of life issues without there ever need to be any type of escalation to the Planning Commission or any other governing body. So it's really about making it very clear to both developers and the community what's allowed and what we want to see, so that there's no gray area.
Yeah, enough trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip.
Yeah, that's because otherwise there's so many ways to abuse this outdoor living space definition, and we see it all the time. So it's following the letter of the law, but not the intent. And this is to better align the intent with the letter.
That's really important. Yeah, that's got to be in the bullets. Yeah, very well put.
No FQMs. I get it.
This is between us.
Yeah.
And the Zoom meeting. All right.
And the one person watching on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. I saw that. Yeah, only one person.
So I have that the Planning Commission has seen a number of applications that meet the letter and intent of the requirements for outdoor living space, but do not meet the intent of, in the opinion of the commissioners, for improving or for providing or addressing quality of life.
And the open space. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not usable outdoor living space.
And could I also ask that when it goes to city council that you could notify all of us so that we can attend that city council meeting when it is presented?
Yeah.
Because that would be really good to show our support to be there at that council meeting.
And I would also encourage commissioners to reach out directly to your city council member and others because most of the best conversations I have are just those one-on-ones. And obviously don't talk between them. We don't want any Brown Act violations, but one at a time is good.
Yeah. And don't tell them what the others have said,
Yes.
but rather you can say the same information to them. And then also just that this proposed revision is to better align the regulations with the intent. Okay.
Randy, can you reread just the first part of the sentence back about the letter of the regulation and the intent?
Yeah, the Planning Commission has seen a number of applications that meet the letter and intent of.
I don't think we want and.
Not the intent.
Oh, not the intent. You're right.
I think,
The letter.
Yeah, meet the letter of the.
Of the regulations for outdoor living space, but do not meet the intent, in the opinion of the commissioners, for addressing quality of life. The projects tend to not provide usable outdoor space, right?
Yeah, they're dimensionally maximizing every square inch they can.
Yeah.
Negatively impacts quality of life for the surrounding neighborhood.
Yeah, maybe we've seen projects that maximize the living space while minimizing the outdoor living space, and we'd like to better balance that with these changes proposed.
I mean, essentially, we're keeping the developers in check. So
I'm not gonna put that, but
you know me, I always go for the jugular.
So would it be possible for representing the planning department or community development department to chime in on that? Could you say you've seen similar things, or would you not want to go there?
I wouldn't make that opinion because you're the ones that are reviewing those applications. I mean, certainly we see that concern and we recognize what but you're the ones that are making those decisions on those applications and brought this concern forward. I'd rather it be coming from the commissioners because you're the ones, it's the applications that you're deciding on. And we're here for, this is what you're stuck with, the ones that are presenting to you what the code is. And so kind of what we put out there is, this is this is permitted, this isn't, this is how this meets it, this is how it doesn't. And but you're the ones that can really make that recommendation on on that quality, like what you're expecting the outdoor living space to be.
We can also say something about just the fact that the code is antiquated and needed to be updated.
I mean, ultimately, there's no reason one of us can't speak.
Yeah, given current building trends, the code has become antiquated.
Yeah, that's my point. So that's why we needed to do this. I mean, like I said, I've been harping at it since I became a
40 years ago, this was not an issue.
Yeah.
I was going to ask Manager Scully as well as Director Forbes, in their opinion, are these recommendations, if they were to be adopted, are they implementable?
I think so, yeah.
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
We've talked about that at the beginning when we were going through those examples. I'd be more concerned if it really was creating absolute limitations and really reducing the square footage, but we talked about where they have that flexibility. The one example was, well, if they put this space on a second level, then they don't have that limitation of that overhang setback, or if they utilize the side yard, so in having those conversations about that, you realize that, or if they're putting a mezzanine in, there's so many other opportunities for them to still get that equivalent square footage in the indoor space or similar square footage. They just have to be creative.
Okay, thank you.
It's not like we're asking for 20-foot side setbacks.
Right? On a 50-foot lot.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, that would be a little, yeah, we would have a whole other conversation, but it would be, and if it was, it's cutting the, if you said we want them to be required to have, R2, R3, an 800 square foot requirement, I'd say now you're eating into a value of the property because they have a certain development, ability. And now you're taking, but this is not changing the overall number. It's changing how it's calculated, but there are so many creative ways that they can address that.
Thank you for your opinion there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of those creative ways, when we make a motion to send this to council, can I be clear on what we're asking council? So we're asking council, or what I think we're asking council is, number one, does the council agree with this direction? And if they do, then what do we need as the next step? We need some public hearing. We need finalized language for the commission to review. We need a working shop with architects to figure out, what would be built based on this. What's kind of the output if city council agrees in this direction and provides some support.
Yeah, what are we asking them to do? That's a great question.
Right. Yeah. I think, you have drafted the changes you would like to see in the language or in the zoning code. So recommend that city council consider these amendments to the zoning code. It's not going to be in an ordinance fashion. And these or similar amendments, you could put it in that language to give them that flexibility. They're going to take the flexibility anyway. And they'll be the ones that direct staff. If you want them to, and before it comes back, anything would come back to planning commission, we would like to, for a final review of an ordinance, we'd like to have a workshop. Then, that's something that I think you might want to ask for, or you could choose, when we have if the city council directs us to prepare an ordinance, and it goes back to planning commission, you could say, we're going to carry this hearing so that we can have a workshop. There's ways you can do it, but I can't just agendize a workshop per se.
But I guess, maybe then to clarify is what I would like to ask city councils, if they agree with this direction and we can continue down this road, to prepare either the time or the budget or whatever, because I know it's probably not free or something if we have to get people together to architects or whatever, take their time to do this. But yeah, I would like to at least ask city council for that directly, so that we can see what we get out of this, beyond what we've seen today in the staff presentation.
So does it go to city council as a agenda item or a hearing item, or what? And who puts it on the agenda? Who can do that? I know city manager can.
Yeah.
Take it as a discussion item, wouldn't you, Brandy?
Maybe I'd have to talk with the city manager on that. But if it's coming as a recommendation from the planning commission, we can say here's the.
It would be similar to how because Recreation and Parks did it with the dog allowing dogs in the park. However, they did that. I would see it being similar because that was an amendment to code as well.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever is done for that could be a blueprint that we could potentially follow.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think if it's a consensus of the commission to have a workshop, that you just put that, for their consideration as well.
Do you want, but the question is, do you want to have the workshop for you, or do you want to have the workshop for, like, the city council to have the workshop? I think you just want to be clear on what you want there.
Sure. Yeah. So in my opinion, I would like to have a workshop because we come up with this language. We know what we're looking for. And I want to make sure that what we would see is what we all envision based on this language and not some. And then we could tweak it if we wanted to. If what they built isn't really what we intended, or we saw some other side effect or something was too restrictive, we could have a chance to make, modifications before it's finalized.
And keep in mind too, city council could just keep this for themselves then and not even bring it back to us necessarily. This is something they could directly take action on too, couldn't they?
Not if they're going to ultimately amend the ordinance. It has to come back to the planning commission.
Okay, so yeah, we definitely want that additional level of.
Okay. Yeah, but to do a workshop, I think what we're really asking for is money, right? We need staff time and we need some direction, and they're so busy with all the other things. It needs to get on the, kind of bigger picture of.
It's not, we wouldn't be, I don't think we're going to be hiring anybody. We don't have.
Oh, okay.
I'll be upfront and honest. We do not have the budget to hire to do any additional work here. That being said, it would be staff time. And that's why I said that way back when we first started talking about this, I think in October or September, whenever we first started talking about it, I mentioned that it wouldn't be you directing us to draft the ordinance. Council would have to direct us to draft the ordinance or prepare the ordinance, because council has that would be part of our work plan. But if we had planning commission and historic preservation commission, and if we had all these different commissions directing us to do stuff, our workload becomes something different than what the city council's strategic planning is. So
understood.
And make that direction of staff's time.
Okay.
Here, this is, we had meetings anyway. I mean, we didn't have anything on this particular agenda, but this is allotted time as part of our budget to have these meetings. We didn't have any extra planning commission meetings to have these conversations. But to, bring it so that we're having a workshop and preparing for any workshops, putting out public notice for addition, just putting feelers out there so that people know that the meeting would be happening. That's additional things that we have to prepare for on our workload. It's not changing, budgetarily per se, but it's taking us away from other things that we might be working on to prepare the ordinance and to do the extra workshop.
Okay, but if we wanted to ask an architect to design something based on the proposed language, would that have a cost?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
Asking them doesn't have a cost. And I just don't know that you're going to have them voluntarily. Any architect that is going to say, well, they're going to demonstrate it in a way, most probably, that shows that they can't do something. So if we were to go the mile of, but then you're dealing with just like, here are the hypotheticals we came up with, right? It's not going to be specific projects. I think it's going to flesh out more as applications come in.
Okay.
I would think you would want an architect to push the limits for you, to show you what the extremes would be.
Yeah. And they might not in the workshop, but when it came to a paying client, they probably would.
Common sense wise, though, there isn't anything in here that isn't doable. We haven't made that much of an extreme change to anything.
Yeah. So okay. My direction is I would like some sort of feedback, beyond what we got tonight as visuals of are we actually going to get what we want with these changes? So again, we can ask city council and they can say no, and they can say we're going to go ahead with these changes, or they can say we don't want to make these changes. But I think a clear ask is better than not.
I'm sure we'll get feedback once this goes more public. Just like they did with dogs in parks. I mean, they got a lot of feedback on that.
And probably on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to, one last thing for the reasoning? I think at the end you'd mentioned something about with trends that the zoning is outdated. Do you want to address anything with trends and the
Value land.
the evolving the evolving nature of things through the pandemic? I mean, people are looking for those kind of spaces I mean, it's just something to think about. We don't need to put it in there, but that could be something maybe you have as a part of the conversations you have with the individual council members.
Yeah, and that would be my biggest advice is when this is agendized, again, any one of us or all of us can speak about it. I think that's going to be more powerful than any memo because they do have a lot of material to read and it's not necessarily going to jump off the page the way us standing before them and saying, look, we've heard from these projects where the community is severely affected and yes, it meets all the requirements, but this is why we're doing this. So I would just strongly urge everyone to take that advantage when it does appear. And we can nominate a spokesman, but I think it's easier if whoever wants to just gives their own feedback on that so they understand why. And we can do that before the meeting as well, but the more we reach out, the better.
The other thing would be time frame because we may have council member changes potentially coming. When do you think this could get on the agenda, Brandy?
I think we'll probably want to at least have the draft minutes. So it might be later and it might be a later meeting in February. Even if it's draft minute, like we can still, but I'd rather have like the motion is something that we're presenting to them with this language.
Yeah, I would consider even waiting until after the election.
You can do that.
It's not that far away. Put it into later March. What's the swearing in day? I forget. Do you know? Anybody know, Dan? Do you know?
I think April, but I don't know when.
Is it that? Okay, so that is pushing it out then.
That's a good question. We keep on saying that this is antiquated. What does that mean at this point? I have a phone that's antiquated. It's like a year old.
It's a nice sounding generalized word.
Yeah, just when was the last time this stuff was updated is really what I wanted to know.
Yeah, it looks like 1996.
Yeah, see, that's forever and a day ago. That really is antiquated.
In terms of phones, yeah.
I think they just had like the bag phones back then, right?
The lash up. Come in, HQ.
Still tin cans and string.
I would take it. It's harder to get a hold of me back then.
So, Brandy, can you read back the reasoning language to us?
Okay. I'm not going to say it's going to be perfect, but the Planning Commission has seen a number of applications that meet the letter of the regulations for outdoor living space, but do not meet the intent in the opinion of the commissioners for addressing quality of life.
Maybe neighborhood compatibility.
Hold on. The project not to provide usable outdoor space. They maximize indoor space and minimize outdoor space. This proposed change is to better align the regulations with the intent and provide balance. With trends in development, the zoning code is antiquated.
I think it's really about the quality of life for the neighborhood. People clearly like these monstrosities because they're buying them. So it's not necessarily about their quality of life. It's about the neighborhood's quality of life.
For addressing quality of life of the neighborhoods.
And open space, so you're not living next to.
Quality of life within our city.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me read it again.
You read it 3 times, it becomes law.
And you clap your heels together.
The Planning Commission has seen a number of applications that meet the letter of the regulations for outdoor living space, but do not meet the intent in the opinion of the commissioners for addressing quality of life in the neighborhoods and within our city.
Yeah.
The projects tend to, provide usable outdoors. The projects tend to provide, I don't know what I had there.
The project
Provide indoor space. The projects tend to provide
maximize indoor
No, I'm
space.
sorry, the projects tend not to provide usable outdoor space.
There you go.
Maximize indoor space and minimize outdoor space.
And the changes presented are to clarify the language and
This proposed change is to better align the regulations with the intent and provide balance. With the trends in development, the zoning code is antiquated.
And I would add, clarify, there's clarifying language has been added.
Okay. Clarifying language.
Wherever it fits best in all that paragraph.
And maybe something to the effect of, since it's been over 25 years, the language is antiquated.
And Sean, was the items we're talking about changing, did they come into effect in 96, or was it some other changes that came into effect in our last revision?
The document I'm looking at just has this effective January 18th, 96 and amended August 1st, 1996. So
that's when the outdoor living space came into play.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, so where it says antiquated, it might be good to say that it's over 25 years since these
Absolutely.
have been revised, and the commission felt that it was time to clarify and tighten up this part of the code.
And that's perfect because we just hit 25 years.
I seem to recall in the early stages of this conversation that one of the reasons why the bonuses were instituted was to encourage some, I don't know what they call it, certain types of features, architectural features or something. Sean, do you remember some of the background behind putting bonuses on and encouraging balconies and things like that?
It might have, this might have been just in conversations with the prior director. I want to say that, it incentivized more articulation in the structure by,
right.
To your point, incentivizing balconies, which break up the mass.
Right, because if that's the case, then, an unattended consequence of incentivizing features that break up the mass turned out to restrict or to minimize the actual amount of outdoor space. Because that's really, you can say it's antiquated, but really the crux of it was the fact that the incentives put in to create one benefit had an unintended consequence, which was to penalize the actual amount of outdoor living space. And we're here to rectify that.
So it kind of prioritized design over function.
Yes.
That's very nice.
Yeah. I think 96 was a big sweeping change across a lot of things too.
That's when they came through with the consistency zoning effort with the 92 general plan update.
There was a lot that changed in 96. So this was one part. So it did get all the attention and maybe it could. And as Wayne said, unintended consequences is a perfect way to put it. Are we good? Do we need a fourth reading to deactivate the law? Or I'll make a motion to ask staff to refer this to City Council as we have amended tonight and with the description attached therein. That close enough?
And I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Strutzenberg, seconded by Commissioner Tupero. Commissioner Hensley, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, real quick, one more comment. I was wondering if the other commissioners would be interested in one more bullet that, with these changes, this is a first step that the commission would like to take to addressing other areas or something like that this isn't the only change we want to make, that this is the first step.
Or we could just spring it on them.
I would suggest, because this, if we're talking about this particular section being this antiquated and the reasoning for, I think you know, otherwise it seems like, oh, we're just piecemealing, changing the zoning. You're finding, found this issue and this first, and now there's a couple others that you may not end up coming back with anything. You may say, hey, that is okay on the others. Because that's not something that they directed you or asked you to do. But rather this is something that has come up because of what you're seeing in the applications.
I see.
It's just, it's up to you, but I wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't complicate it.
Yeah, I think they're also, everyone's a little distracted by election season right now, so we don't want to overwhelm anyone.
I don't want to scare them either.
Yeah, Mike, because my question would be, if I were on council, well, what else? And you might forget the whole point of what we're trying to present.
You allow dogs in parks, next you want to allow elephants. So point taken, Commissioner Hensley, but I would refrain from that at this time.
I would agree with that. So we have a motion and a second then. Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Topero.
Yes.
Commissioner Berg.
Yes.
Commissioner Ung.
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yes.
And did I miss anyone? The list jumped around on me. Sorry. Oh, Commissioner Godek. Sorry.
Yes.
I will also vote yes. Yeah, when I can't see everyone's face on the screen, that side list jumped around. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Motion passes unanimously.
Yay!
Excellent. Great work, everyone. That was fantastic collaboration. Again, thank you to staff for putting that together, and Commissioner Hensley, thank you for drafting language to really keep us focused. That absolutely helped keep this going smoothly. So thank you, everyone. Great feedback. And hopefully this is the first of many improvements we can make. But we're only starting with one.
I'd like to say something. You guys are really impressive. I just got to tell you that. I mean, half the meeting I sat here going, oh my God, this is amazing. You guys really, you know, as someone who's lived in the community for 20 years, you don't always see what volunteers like yourselves do. So I'm really proud to sit next to you guys. It was a really impressive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Berg. And hopefully that's the reason no one watches us on YouTube, because they trust us, not because they don't care.
I think, Chantel, especially, this has been a long time, almost dream of yours to start making some proactive action like this.
Actually, it's why I really, you know, I've done my 7 commissions, and I will do one more commission after this, but my whole reason for being on this commission was really to make a change with the open space and, you know, how we look at also the green space, you know, I think we can do further down the line. So I'm ecstatic that, you know, we've opened up this door and are addressing it, because it's high time. So thank you all for supporting this, and the teamwork is awesome.
Yeah, it feels great to be doing something proactive for once rather than just reactive. This is awesome. And thanks to staff again for very independently and unbiasedly supporting our efforts.
Yes, thank you.
Our pleasure.
That brings us now to items from staff. Do we have any other staff items?
No other items.
Excellent.
Oh, I do have one. I just want to add, the ADU ordinances were adopted by City Council last week.
So have they gone to coastal now?
The coastal one will go to Coastal Commission, and the inland will be effective starting February 11th.
Excellent. Only took 27 hearings, but we are making progress on ADUs. Commission items and referrals to staff. Do any commissioners have anything to share? Commissioner Hensley.
Yeah, I have one. I'd like to make a motion. I'd just like to get a kind of status report on some of the previous big projects that the commission has dealt with, just to hear where they are. So for the Galleria project and the Legato project, Yeah, I'd just like to know, not like what they're doing, but just like what permits have they pulled and where are they in the process? And if we could have just information, like for Galleria, if anything's coming back to us, or kind of what's going on there. Sorry, that was a long motion.
Does it
I
have
would
to
second that if it takes a second.
Does it have to be a motion if it's just a recommendation?
Well,
The referral does, because it needs to come from the whole commission.
Yeah. So let me restate it then. So I'm just looking for even a verbal report status on the two projects, the Galleria and the Legato project, on what kind of where they are in the process. And specifically for the Galleria project, what is expected in 2021, if anything, by the March planning commission meeting.
Are there any other big projects coming? I don't want to differ from the motion, but are there any other big things coming down the pike that we should have a heads up on? It would be nice to know as well, you know, not just what's already in the works, but what's on the horizon, if there's any stuff.
You've got things like the Healthy Living Campus, but I have no idea where that's at.
Right, yeah. So I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to talk about potential coming projects because those will be heard by you, and I don't want to prejudice any review that you may have of those applications when they do come, because they may shift and change as they go through their application processes and move forward. So, but we can certainly provide an update on Galleria, Legato.
And I would add to that, if I could, the Northrop project that was approved about a year and a half ago. I have no idea where that's at. That was a lot of excavation, and I don't know what stage they're at.
Yeah, they had multiple phases for that one. So we have a motion and a second for review of those three projects, verbal or otherwise. Commissioner Hensley.
Yes.
Commissioner Topero.
Yes.
Commissioner Godek.
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Ung.
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
I already voted.
Oh, sorry. Darn this list. Commissioner Berg.
Yes.
Did I get everyone that time? I'm just going with faces now. Forget the list. Excellent. I will also vote yes. Perfect. So that motion passes. Does anyone else have a referral to staff or an item to share? And is there a motion to adjourn at 10:17?
How about our new commissioners make a motion in a second for that?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I will second that motion.
All right. We have a motion and a motion by Commissioner Berg, seconded by Commissioner Godek to adjourn the meeting at 10:17. Final roll call of the night, hopefully. Commissioner Topero.
Yes.
Commissioner Strutzenberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Ung.
Yes.
Commissioner Hensley.
Yes.
Commissioner Godek.
Yes.
Commissioner Berg.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. We are adjourned.
Congratulations on your first motion and second. It's not that hard.
Survived.
Be safe, everyone. Stay well.
Thank you.
Oh,